Hey friends, this is our Dean's Fandom of Fiction, and today's special we are gonna see. What if Goku had dragon? Sorry for disturbance, you skipped 20 seconds from here. This note for author of the fanfiction. I have given credits to author and description of the video by if the original author wishes to reclaim copyright or remove this video, I kindly request before giving copyright strike. Please contact us using the information provided in the pinned comment. We respect and acknowledge authorship rights. And I will delete that specific video by myself. Thank you. Fiction start from here. The line went on for miles. I mean that literally. A queue of people, waiting patiently, stretching out to the horizon in either direction. The floor was a gray tile, the sky a cloudy gray, and the light itself had a grayish tinge to it. If one were to imagine the most boring experience possible in all of creation, this line in this washed-out wasteland would come close. And I was smack dab in the middle of it. My name is I forgot. That's just how freaking long I've been in this line. I've forgotten a great many things while standing here for an eternity. I'm really only certain of one thing. This is death. I'm not quite sure how I died. Overdose, perhaps. Car accident. In any case, 1 minute I have a heartbeat and I'm on my home planet, the next I'm in this line. I've given up on trying to start conversation. No one seems to hear me. Either everyone in hearing distance had already forgotten how to talk or some magic kept my voice from reaching them. That was a while ago. By this point, I'm not sure I could make a sound if I tried. It had just been so long. Every now and then, the line would move and I would shuffle forward a step or two. And then it was back to the waiting. I'd run off into the distance, but what would be the point? I couldn't see anything, and there was no guarantee that anything existed in this limbo except the line. Besides, I would lose my place. I'd have to start again at the back and be stuck here even longer. I never got tired, or sleepy, or hungry. Guess those things are for the living. I just stood there, numb and dumb and silent, waiting for the line to move again. At some point, in that timeless space, I made it near the front. I blinked at the person behind the desk. I had the vaguest memory of a movie. I'd always loved movies, TV shows, and I'm really all fiction. Those memories had lasted the longest. I wanted to say the guy looked like an agent, for some reason. Suit and tie, flat expression, sunglasses. Next, he would say in a voice as gray as the surroundings. The lucky soul at the front of the line would step forward. They would exchange words I couldn't make out, and then the person would vanish. This process repeated a few dozen times, during which time I relearned how to count, just so I could measure when it would be my turn. Finally, I stepped forward when he said next. Soul 4829A 1826M0683Q0175G, you have been selected for a replacement reincarnation. Do you accept? If he'd asked me to suck his dick while I was lowered into a vat of acid, I would have accepted. Anything was better than waiting in this line. Yes, I said. We thank you for your service. And then how to describe it? The closest I could put it is that I fell asleep. As I slept, I dreamed. I dreamed of a young boy who grew into a man, the adventures he had, the trials he faced, the battles he won. And as I dreamed, I realized it was familiar. And when the dream reached its ending, it started to go in reverse. I saw it all backwards as the story returned to the beginning. And I realized my purpose. When I woke up, I knew who I had become and why I was here. I was now Son Goku, also known as Kakarot. I was now the son of Bardock and the adoptive grandson of Son Gohan. I was now a Saiyan sent to Earth. And some power that was had decided the story should go differently. I settled into my second life easily enough. I had first woken up in Grandpa Gohan's hut, head wrapped in bandages and the old martial artist overjoyed to see me awake. The coma from the head injury was when original Goku's and my souls were switched, it seemed. That thought kept me humble. Something had just lifted out the protagonist's soul and replaced it with mine. Whatever ROB had set this up, I had no intention of pissing it off. Whatever its reason for having me take the idiot hero's place armed with foreknowledge of canon, I would give it one hell of a show. Any personality changes were explained away by the head injury. I spent a few quiet weeks in bed while the gash in my skull scabbed over, with kindly old Gohan hovering over me with all the love of a grandparent for their blood grandchild. It was really very sweet how much this hermit cared for the alien boy he'd found in the woods. I eagerly got to know him and was soon reciprocating his love without having to fake it at all. Memories of my old life didn't bother me or make me nostalgic because I had none. Other than remembering the line and having the events of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super downloaded into my brain, I was a clean slate. I couldn't tell you if I had a family, or what I did for a living, or even what species I'd been. All I knew was that this was another chance at life, and I was determined to make the most of it. Adapting to the body of a 4-year-old with a tail was no more difficult than adapting to having a body, period. It felt as natural as anything had ever been. I had a vague understanding that puberty would introduce strange and powerful urges, but for the most part I couldn't tell any difference from being a kid to being a disembodied spirit. And my fifth appendage was handy for washing my back during a bath. When the day came that Grandpa Gohan undid my bandages and was satisfied I was healed, my training began. I had been bugging my caretaker to train me in martial arts almost since I woke up. I explained it away as a desire to be cool like my grandpa, but the truth was more to do with survival. My power level, if I recalled correctly, was a measly 2. Frieza, at full power, was 120 million. While never measured, Beerus was strong enough to kick Frieza's ass with his little finger. For my own purposes, I'd assume the god of destruction was worth at least 100 of Frieza, which would put him in the range of 10 billion or more. And the angels like Whis were at a level beyond even that. The gist of it was, I was currently a teeny tiny krill in an ocean with blue whales. I hadn't exactly been given instructions, but I knew this. I did not want to die again. Whether I'd go to the other world or back to the line, I didn't know. But I was determined to never find out. So, the simplest way to stay alive would be to become the biggest fish. I had a long way to go, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? My first step was learning Grandpa Gohan's version of the turtle hermit style. So, I trained. I learned how to throw a punch and a kick. I learned how to push my body to the limits and then go even further. I learned to hunt and track and live off the land. Grandpa Gohan taught me well. We spared frequently, as much for fun as for training. As much as he taught me how to fight, he also taught me to be at peace. I had to meditate for hours at a time, which I put up much less of a fuss to than your average kid would do. If I learned one thing from the line, it was patience. During these times where I emptied my mind and tried to be at one with the universe, I began to feel the first stirrings of what I assumed were Kai inside me. I'd yet to manifest it, but I assumed it would come eventually so long as I kept at it. A few months in, I snuck out after bedtime. I wandered about a mile into the forest until I found a clearing. Once there, I meditated for a good hour, trying to become as serene as possible. When I was ready and my eyes still closed, I looked up. I could feel the moonlight on my lids. My tail got all tingly and goosebumps popped up on my flesh. Somewhere deep inside me, I felt a beast begin to stir. I knew I was taking a risk by doing this. But the Azaru form was just too damn useful and underappreciated. Better to work on it when I was a pipsqueak and relatively harmless, even with a 10x power boost than later when I'd be at risk of blowing up the planet. With great hesitance and fighting to keep myself as calm and relaxed as possible, I opened my eyes a crack. Have you ever been angry? Really, truly angry? Seeing red, blood pounding in your veins, hearing a ringing angry. The kind of angry that feeds on itself, taking over every neuron in your brain until nothing matters but acting on that anger. Combine that with the hazy, liberating buzz of being drunk, and you might come close to how it felt for a Saiyan to look at the full moon. And I wasn't even getting a direct view of it. I had a split second of clarity and closed my eyes. My teeth felt too big for my mouth, and I had hair in places that it shouldn't be. As seconds passed and I resisted the temptation to just let go and open my eyes, I felt my body return to normal, reverting to its ordinary toddler form. Right. Well, that was something. It honestly scared me, the power of the reactions that little dose of Blutz waves evoked from me. But if a hothead like Vegeta could control it, I sure as HFIL would. I snuck glimpses until dawn, meditating after each one and lasting just a little longer before I panicked and closed my eyes before losing control. Exhausted, I made my way back to the hut. Son Goku. Where have you been, young man? I was worried sick. Oops. Forgot about Grandpa. It took a lot of explaining, during which I brought up that I had started to remember things from before my incident. Like how I was an alien and that I had been sent to destroy all life on the planet. I assured Grandpa Gohan that I had no intention of doing any such thing, but one of the keys to doing it was the Azaru form. Grandpa was against me training something so dangerous, but I talked him around. It's a part of who I am, Grandpa. I want to master it the same way you're teaching me to master myself. And anyway, what if I look at the moon by accident and can't control it? I could hurt you and a lot of other people. Well, very well. But no more sneaking off alone. We'll do this with me to supervise you. And if you ever lose control, I'm cutting off your tail right then and there. You said that would turn you back to normal, right? Yeah, I said, curling my tail around to cuddle it. But could you please make sure I'm actually gone before you do it? I don't want to lose my tail. Of course, Goku. The years passed, with my days filled with training and mountain life shenanigans, and one night a month working on safely and sanely transforming into a giant ape creature. There were a couple of near misses, but I managed to keep my head and stay in control each time. But turning into the Azaru felt no different than being Saiyan. I worked on transforming back despite the pull of the moon, and even on transforming outside the full moon. I wanted to completely master the form. It was the same principle as Super Saiyan full power, right? When I could look at the full moon and not even blink, when I could transform in broad daylight and keep my power level as calm and still as a pond, then I would have mastered the Azaru form. I had plans to be this exacting and thorough for every transformation. That was one of the things I didn't like about the original Goku. He never repeated what he did with the original Super Saiyan transformation for Super Saiyan 2 or 3 or God or Blue. And speaking of Blue, if it were possible to combine the Super Saiyan and the God transformations, why not Super Saiyan and Azaru? Azaru and God. All three at once. I was going to find transformations that no one in canon had even imagined, and I was going to work at them tirelessly until they were as easy and effortless as blinking. I would train constantly as if the fate of the world, the galaxy, all 12 universes depended on me, because they kind of did. Or would, at some point in the future provided I didn't change too many things, and probably even if I did. I would work as if Cell would arrive the next day. When I was exhausted and wanted to quit, I'd picture Zeno's smiling face as he wiped an entire universe, trillions of lives, out of existence. Damn it, I would kick Frieza's ass in base form if I had my way. Grandpa Gohan was a mixture of proud and concerned at my work ethic. He watched me train until I bled and consider it just a warm-up and was filled with as much worry as admiration. I would just smile and say I want to be the best that I can be. How can I find it if I don't go looking for it? And he would smile and shake his head and caution me to not push myself too far, which I would anyway. I managed to beat Grandpa in an all-out fight by the time I was 8, including the use of Kai attacks. Once I started consistently handing him his ass, he shook his head and declared he had nothing left to teach me. By my own estimation, using my Kai sense and comparing it to those around me, I was at 100. That still left me orders of magnitude away from where I knew I could be, but it was a start. From then on, I focused mostly on honing my technique and boosting my strength, trying to eke out as much progress as I could from Earth's original gravity. I could have gone searching for Bulma to build me a gravity room or gathered the Dragon Balls which I had learned to sense, but I didn't. I didn't want to toss canon completely out the window. And, I admit, a part of me wanted to enjoy my childhood alone with Grandpa for as long as I could. So, I focused on maintaining my strength once it peaked and refining my fighting style. I reverse-engineered all the Kai techniques I could. I had fun when I wasn't hammering myself on the anvil of training. And so, the days passed until it was the 1st of September, age 749. Grandpa Gohan and I were having lunch, a fish I had gone and fetched myself. Around us, my multiforms cut wood, cleaned the hut, and tended to the garden. Incredibly handy, the ability to make copies of yourself. It was a bit of a headache when we fused and I had to process their memories, but it was definitely worth it. My ears picked up. I hear something. An engine, I think. Grandpa perked up. Oh. Who'd be way out here in the wilderness? The noise vanished, to be replaced by vocal complaints. Ugh. I hate nature. I definitely didn't wear the right shoes for this. Grandpa and I exchanged looks, and sweat drops on both our brows. Then the goddess came walking up the path to our hut. My jaw dropped. The show hadn't done her justice. Or maybe it was different seeing her in real life rather than as a cartoon. Or maybe puberty was striking fast and hard on my 13-year-old body. In any case, I couldn't look away. Her skin was flawless, her hair was the most dazzling shade of blue, and her legs went on forever. Even in a t-shirt and shorts, her figure was breathtaking. Hello there. Grandpa Gohan called out, snapping me out of my daze. I quickly regained my cool, fighting down certain physical reactions. When I wouldn't embarrass myself, I stood up alongside Grandpa. We both bowed as the girl came close. My name is Son Gohan, and this is my grandson, Goku. Who are you, young lady? The girl wiped her brow, honestly out of breath climbing the small hill between the road and our hut. Hi. My name's Bulma. Nice to meet you. You got anything to drink? I wordlessly handed her a cup of tea and paid a lot of attention to her throat as she gulped it down. Grandpa smacked my head too fast for her to see. I looked away, blushing. Damn hormones. What's a city girl doing all the way up here in the mountains? She grinned, wiping her mouth. I'm on a treasure hunt. She reached into her bag, pulling out an orange orb with red stars in the center. Have either of you seen a jewel like this? There should be one nearby. Oh my. Goku, it's just like that one I found years ago, before you even got here. Go get it. Yes, Grandpa, I replied obediently. I went into the hut, gathering the 4-star ball from where it was stashed on a little shrine we'd made for it. I came out and Bulma's eyes lit up. Yes, you do have it. Another Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball? Is that what these things are called? I asked innocently. Bulma got a calculating gleam in her eyes. Coming to a decision, she pulled out another Dragon Ball and laid them on the stump I'd been sitting on. I walked forward and added the one in my hand. The three of us watched as they began to pulse with an inner light. "Dear me, it's never done that before," Gohan said, leaning forward with interest. "These are the magical Dragon Balls," Bulma explained. "There are only 7 of them in the whole world. If you gather them all together and say the ancient words, the dragon will appear and grant you a wish." "Wow," I said, more taken with how her face lit up than the explanation of the power I already knew about. "Well, thanks for giving it to me," she said, reaching forward. My eyes narrowed and I grabbed the 4-star ball back. "Hey, wait a minute. This is my grandpa's treasure. You can't just take it." She got an ugly smile on her face. She pulled out a revolver and held it in Grandpa's general direction. "Hand it over, kid, or the old man gets it." Grandpa's face closed off. Faster than her eyes could see, he raced over and grabbed the gun right out of her hands. He unloaded it and threw it on the ground behind him before Bulma even realized it was gone. "Now that's very rude. You just don't threaten old men with guns, young lady. It's very unbecoming." Bulma gaped. "What the hell?" "Grandpa and I are really strong," I supplied helpfully. Bulma suddenly looked very nervous. Ha ha ha. Wasn't that funny? The way I pretended to be all evil and you were so awesome. I wasn't really going to shoot him. I was just trying to scare you. Silly me, hee hee hee." Grandpa sighed. "Let this be a lesson to you, young Bulma. Those who threaten violence will often be met with violence. Had you pulled that act with anyone else with our skills, you'd likely be in very big trouble right now." She gulped. Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for not killing me or anything." "I have an idea," I spoke up. "Grandpa and I help you gather up these Dragon Balls. We'll be your bodyguards or whatever. In return, we all share the wish at the end." Bulma gaped. "Wait, seriously? You want to help me after what I just did?" "It's not like Grandpa was really in any danger. He could have caught the bullets if you shot at him," I said casually, making her eyes widen. "And yeah. You seem pretty weak and you'll probably run into trouble gathering the rest of these Dragon Balls if they're as special as you say. It would bother me if we let you go on your way all helpless and something happened to you. So we come along, keep an eye on each other, and get a wish at the end of it. Sounds like a good deal to me." Bulma smiled and I had to hide how my heart jumped. Seriously, what was wrong with me? That sounds awesome, actually. I'd really appreciate it. Grandpa Gohan nodded. "I agree. With one exception. I won't be coming along." "Grandpa?" I asked, confused. He was perfectly able to travel. "I'm old, Goku. I had my fill of adventure. I'm perfectly happy to stay here for the rest of my days. But you should go with this young woman. Go out, see the world, make mistakes, learn from them. It's time you flew the nest." I hugged my grandfather in every way that mattered, tears in my eyes. Then I rubbed my eyes, sniffed my nose, and turned to Bulma. "Well, we're burning daylight. Let's go." Bulma nodded, gathering up the Dragon Balls and putting them in her bag. I handed over the 4-star ball, which she took hesitantly. Then she pulled out a case of capsules, throwing one to produce a motorcycle in a puff of smoke. "Oh, darn, wrong one. We need a sidecar." "No need. I prefer to run." She looked at me like I was an idiot. "This bike can go over 100 miles an hour." I grinned. "I can keep up." And I did. Bulma watched in disbelief as I kept pace with her bike, my legs blurring as I ran faster than a sprinting cheetah. I could have just flown, but where's the challenge in that? Even this was only marginally difficult because I was wearing the heaviest weighted clothing I could produce with my Kai. I wasn't the best at that particular technique, but every little bit helped. "Wow. How the hell are you so fast?" Bulma called about 10 minutes into our journey after looking away from me to consult the dragon radar. I kept the fact that I could sense the energy signature on my own a little secret. Let her feel like she's got an advantage over me for her own peace of mind. "I trained really hard," I said, not even out of breath. "Are you even human?" I laughed. "Actually, no, I'm not. But Earthlings can get this strong and fast too. It just takes a lot of hard work and Kai manipulation." Bulma almost swerved off the road. "Wait, what? You're not human. Did you say Earthling? What are you, some sort of alien?" I chuckled after I was sure I wouldn't have to save her. "Yeah. Didn't the tail give me away?" I waved it at her. "I thought you just glued it on or something. I didn't know it was real." She shrieked, reaching a truly uncomfortable decibel. I rubbed my sensitive ear. "Well, it is." Bulma's eyes lit up and she slowed down. "Wow. I can't believe it. I'm talking to an actual extraterrestrial. This is like one of Tite's dumb stories." She eyed me like I was a unicorn and she had the tranquilizer gun already. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" I leaned subtly away. "Okay." Just promise you won't ask to dissect me or anything. Of course not, she said, though her eyes looked a little shifty. What are you? Where did you come from? When did you come to Earth? How? Why? I mentally ordered my responses. A Saiyan. Planet Vegeta. In 739, when I was around 3. In a Saiyan space pod. Technically, I was sent here to exterminate all life so the Planet Trade Organization could sell the Earth as real estate, but really my dad sent me to escape the destruction of our planet and train to avenge our people. Did you say exterminate all life? Are you serious? I'm afraid so. The Planet Trade Organization is the most powerful entity in the universe. They own most of this galaxy. To them, wiping out a pre-interstellar civilization is like squashing an anthill. My species, the Saiyans, were enslaved as enforcers a long time ago. I was programmed to be an omnicidal maniac, but then I hit my head as a kid. Grandpa managed to make me fall in love with him and Earth before the memories came back, I explained. My God, Bulma said to herself. This is incredible. You're not making this up, are you? Cross my heart and hope to die. A warrior's word is his honor, I said, quoting something Grandpa had said to me a long time ago. Alright then. Bulma kept me busy for hours, asking me all sorts of questions about outer space and the Saiyans. I tried to explain that I only had what I remembered as a baby and what I could scrounge from my pod's computer, but that barely deterred her. Finally, the barrage stopped when the sun was beginning to set. Pit stop, she said, braking the bike. I turned and fired a Kai blast into the forest. What the hell was that? Bulma demanded. There was a bad guy that direction. I took care of him so you wouldn't get kidnapped or anything, I answered. Oh thanks, I guess. Bulma wandered off in that direction, returning when her business was finished. She had a pale expression, so I guess she saw what my Kai ball had done to the pterodactyl-like thing I'd shot down. That guy could have eaten me. Thanks Goku. No problem, that's why I'm here, to protect the pretty lady on her quest. She blushed. I blinked. Was she seriously reacting to flirting from a 13-year-old? How experienced was she, exactly? Was this wish for the perfect boyfriend she was after a little girl's fantasy and not the last resort of a jaded woman? We rode a little more and I paused when we got near a certain rock. We should camp here tonight. Okay. Bulma capsuled her motorcycle and then produced a capsule house. I'm hunting for dinner. Would you like anything? Her mouth pursed. No thanks. I'm fine with the food I packed. Huh. Guess the city girl wasn't comfortable with food that had been moving an hour earlier. I ate enough to feed a hungry Saiyan, which is to say enough for 20 men. That done, I walked into the capsule house. Bulma was enraptured by the television, where a handsome man was kissing a beautiful woman. So romantic, she sighed. I walked up beside her. Bulma, can I take a bath? It's been a week since my last one. Wait, what? Get in there right now. I'll wash your clothes, just get clean right now. She yelled once she processed my words and gave me a sniff. Don't bother. They're too heavy for you or the machine. I'll just destroy them and make new ones. How exactly do you plan to do that? I doubt you have a sewing machine on you. I grinned. I'll show you after you take your bath, okay? I shuffled off to the bathroom where I gathered my weighted clothing into a bowl and atomized them with a controlled Kai blast. I then took a quick shower before hopping into the tub. As I was relaxing, Bulma came up to the door. Goku. Earlier, you said something about Kai manipulation. What is that? Kai is inner energy or life force. It's in everything. If you train at it, you can learn to manipulate it. It's how I made that energy blast and part of why I'm so fast. I channel my Kai throughout my body and that makes me stronger and increases my perception speed. I can also use it to do a lot of different techniques. Like the one I'll use to make my new clothes. I'll believe it when I see it, Bulma called. So, tell me more about yourself. Not much to tell, I said as I washed my hair. I'm 13, I love my grandpa, and my hobbies are training and training. Got to get strong if I want to beat Frieza. That's the leader of the PTO that destroyed your planet, right? Just how strong is he? Put it this way. There's this thing called power level that measures a person's Kai. You're a 2, which incidentally is what I was at birth. Grandpa Gohan is about 80, and I'm around 1500, give or take if I go all out. Frieza is 120 million. What? 120 million. Are you sure you got the numbers right? How is that even possible? Bulma shouted through the door. Biology. His race is notorious for being ridiculously powerful. But I'll beat him one day. How? Are you going to use the wish to get super strong? I stuck out my tongue even though she couldn't see. Bleh. No way. Power from a wish isn't earned. I don't want to win like that. I want to train myself the old-fashioned way to the point that I'm stronger than Frieza. And then I'll get even stronger than that until I'm the best that I can be. It'd be a shame to die without reaching your full potential, don't you think? Yeah, I guess. Are you going to be much longer? I got out and flured my aura to evaporate all the water on my body. I wrapped a towel around my waist and walked out. All done. Bulma stared. And drooled. Bulma. Are you okay? I looked down and tried to imagine what she saw. My body fat percentage was in the single digits. My body looked like an anatomical chart, each muscle body pressed flesh up against the surface of my skin. My neck bulged like a tree trunk, my pecs were mesas creating valleys and ridges in my chest, and my abs were like bricks in a paved road leading down to a V-belt, sharp enough to cut your finger. I grinned and flexed my bicep. Like what you see, Bulma? I asked teasingly. No way she was actually attracted to me. She was probably just trying to reconcile the cognitive dissonance between my baby face and statuesque body. She blushed up a storm and rushed past me, slamming the door shut. I frowned. Bulma. Are you okay? I was just making fun. I didn't mean to make you mad. No, no. I'm fine, she said, though her voice wavered slightly. I cast my mind for a topic to talk about. About the wish. How do you want to split it? What were you going to wish for before I came along? Oh. I was going to wish for the perfect boyfriend. I crossed my arms and leaned against the door. Couldn't you get that the normal way? Why use a magic wish to get a boy to worship you? You must have them beating down your door. Yeah, 'cause I'm rich and my dad's famous. The bitterness in the words made black coffee seem like cola. I blinked. I was going to say beautiful and smart. But I'm sorry if you got the wrong kind of attention. You deserve to have a guy treat you nice. Thanks, Goku. I could hear her smile. What would you wish for? I shrugged. Something we can both use that we couldn't possibly get by ordinary means. Like immortality or world peace. I had a brainwave. How about a copy of all the knowledge in the universe? You could use all the technology and science and stuff at your dad's company, and I could use the martial arts and Kai techniques to become a better fighter. But that actually sounds awesome. I can't even imagine how advanced alien technology is. Though how would it all be stored? Let me think about it. Okay. I waited a while, Bulma naturally taking longer in the bathroom than I had. She came out with a towel around her and wrapped up in her hair. I carefully avoided looking at her. So, what's this about making new clothes? I focused and held out a finger. A beam of light emerged from it, which coalesced into a guy, pants, and underwear. They made a crater as they crashed from midair to the ground. I winced. Sorry. I wasn't thinking. How Bulma gaped. I don't know which is worse, your casual energy to matter conversion or the fact that you wear clothes that heavy. It's easy once you know the trick. And I need to train however I can. Saiyans evolved for a gravity much higher than Earth's. Until someone invents artificial gravity, I'm stuck with weighted clothing as a substitute. Bulma grinned. Maybe it'll be in that copy of everything to know that we wish for. So we're going with that? I asked, dropping the towel as I slipped my briefs on underneath it. Bulma gulped but kept talking as I got dressed. Why yeah. It's much more useful than my wish for a boyfriend. Besides, in all that knowledge might be stuff about robotics and artificial intelligence. Then I can just build the perfect boyfriend. I tilted my head. Well, if that's what you want. I still say you're giving up on men a little too early. I mean, if you were my girlfriend, I'd try to be perfect for you. I can't be the only one in the world. She blushed. Thank you for that, Goku. I'll try and remember that. I laid down on the floor, curling up like a cat. Well, good night. Don't you at least want to be on the couch? I'd probably break it. Besides, I've slept on the ground with rocks for pillows before. This is fine. I smiled at her. Sweet dreams, Bulma. Sweet dreams, Goku. With that, she retreated to the bedroom, turning off the light as she went. I made myself comfortable on the carpet and began to meditate, slipping into sleep within minutes. The next day dawned bright and clear. I went outside for my morning workout and to hunt breakfast while Bulma slept. That done, I went to check on the amphibian that had been our unintended neighbor. Hello in there? I called into the head hole of the shell. Hello. My name is Turtle. Who are you? I'm Son Goku. How'd you get here? It's a long way from the ocean. It's a long story. Do you have any salt water, by any chance? I brought him inside, meeting a bleary-eyed Bulma at the coffee machine. I got Turtle a bucket of artificial seawater, which he guzzled thirstily. He explained that he'd gotten into a race with a hare and gotten lost. He'd been trying to make his way home ever since, but he was very slow on land. Bulma pulled out a map. You're out of luck. The ocean is about 100 miles away. That'll take me 10 years. Turtle wailed, holding his head with his flippers. We can take you, I offered. What? Goku, we're on a mission here. We can't take a detour for every hairy hardluck we run into. No offense, she tacked on. None taken. This was one chill Turtle. If I fly us instead of taking your slow vehicles, we can be there in 20 minutes tops, I offered. Bulma narrowed her eyes. You're telling me that not only can you fly, but you can fly at around half the speed of sound while carrying that huge turtle in me? Easy. Bulma eyed us before shaking her head. Hell, I'll do it just to see what you do. Let's get on it. Bulma got dressed, which took a couple hours. I bonded with Turtle while we waited. When she finally emerged, she capsuled the house and then looked expectantly at me. I hiked Turtle onto my back and then held him in place with my tail. Standing straight, I offered my arms for her to get into. Looking flushed, she settled into a bridal carry. Ready? Ready? Just do it before I change my mind. I lifted us gently. If you weren't looking at the ground vanishing below us, you wouldn't be able to tell we were moving. Once we were at a suitable height, I turned us south and began to accelerate. I did it slowly so they barely felt it. Before you knew it, the ground was blurring below us. How are you two doing? I asked halfway through the journey. This is a lot higher than I'm used to. Turtle sounded quite relaxed. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. We're flying. I'm flying. Bulma sounded very breathless. Why isn't there any air resistance? She demanded. I'm holding a bubble of air around us so we don't feel it, I supplied, trying to comfort her. I barely noticed her squeezing me hard as she could, her hold was so gentle, at least to me. This is amazing. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's amazing, she said. She closed her eyes and tucked her head into my neck. Just tell me when it's over. We're nearly there, I supplied. I landed as fast as I could while making the descent gentle. Turtle all but sprinted into the water, crying out with joy. I gently set Bulma down on her own feet. She took a few shaky steps, like a newborn colt. Bulma. Are you okay? That was totally wicked. She screamed. Goku, how did you do that? Flying is pretty easy if you have enough Kai. You just push against gravity, I explained simply. She laughed, sounding a little out of it. A flying alien. I'm friends with a flying alien. She eyed me with a wild gleam in her eye. I have got to get you into my lab. There's so many things I want to know about Saiyan physiology and Kai. Why was she so excited about this? She hadn't given a shit in canon. Maybe because she'd been introduced to it differently, with fun stuff instead of just raw destruction. Sure. But again, no dissection. Will you agree to an MRI and a CAT scan? Sure. There was really no reason for me to train with Master Roshi. Grandpa Gohan had already taught me the Kamehameha wave and I was the strongest person on the planet based on my Kai sense. Besides, Bulma was my best shot at a gravity chamber. Thank you so much. Turtle spoke up from where he'd been playing in the ocean. If you'll wait right here, I'll go get my master. He'll surely reward you for helping me. I turned to Bulma. Well, Bulma, how about it? Feel like a day at the beach? Sure. Why not? With you flying us, we can get the other Dragon Balls in a snap. Bulma and I settled in on the beach while Turtle went off to find his master. She, naturally, had packed swim gear. The sight of her in a two-piece lounging on a chaise in the sun had me very glad that the water was cold. I played around in the water, doing laps and flips and dives, before relaxing on the beach. I built a city out of sand and then rampaged through it like Godzilla or Kong, to Bulma's giggles. After that, I just laid back in the sand next to her. Rest was just as much a part of training as working out. It was good for me to just take a day off every now and then. Goku, can I play with your tail? Bulma asked after a few minutes. I sat up and turned my back to her. Sure. Just be careful. It's really sensitive. Squeezing it used to make me pass out before I trained that weakness away. Who would squeeze it? Remember what I told you about the Azaru? Grandpa did it when I started to lose control training it. That's another thing about you to study. Turning into a 100-foot simian just because you get exposed to a particular kind of radiation makes no sense. What kind of evolutionary forces would produce something like that? She wondered aloud as she stroked my tail, curling her finger around the tip. I about melted into a pile of goo. It was so much better than getting your back scratched. Payless people just wouldn't understand. What's your plan after we get our wish? Bulma asked. Well, I'll go back with you to wherever you live so you can study me. I'll train like usual until the World Martial Arts Tournament. Grandpa Gohan told me it's a gathering of the strongest fighters in the world. It might be fun and the prize money should come in handy. What about after that? What do you want to do with your life? Bulma's hands shifted from my tail to my shoulders, but I didn't care. She could touch me however she wanted, I wouldn't care, so blissed out was I. I want to get as strong as physically possible, but that'll take years. I want a place I can call home and enough food to fill my belly. I want to find a nice girl and settle down and try to repopulate the Saiyans. I'm an endangered species, after all. Bulma frowned behind my back. Have you thought about donating sperm or cloning? That's a lot of pressure to put on one woman. No one's raising my kids except me and their mother, I said decisively. Call me selfish, but I'm not going to have 100 kids running around I don't know about. Besides, what mother couple would be able to handle a half-Saiyan? And cloning is just weird. So, yeah, just the one girl and a bunch of babies. Unless she's okay with me having multiple wives, but what are the odds of that? Bulma pursed her lips. Pretty low, unless she's bisexual or not that jealous. Probably both just to be safe. Right. So, a nice family-minded girl, I said, leaning back into her hands. Or possibly 2 or more open-minded girls, Bulma added, her tone teasing. Yeah, every guy's dream. But not very likely. Bulma pursed her lips. You'd never see it the other way around. No one would be okay with one woman with multiple husbands. Yeah, that's not fair. Oh, that got me thinking. I stood up, Bulma's hand's absence felt as I left their embrace. I shook my head and focused, forcing down my erection. Hopefully she hadn't seen that. Anyway, I used the matter creation technique to make a volleyball net and ball, and then used multiform. This should be fun, the 4 of me said in unison. Bulma was drooling again. About an hour later, while we were having lunch, there was a beeping from Bulma's bag. She went to check and her eyes shot wide open. Goku. Another Dragon Ball is moving towards us. I perked up. Huh. Maybe that's the gift Turtle's master wants to give us. This is just the best day. Woohoo. Bulma jumped up and down in joy. My eyes tracked her jiggling bits for a few seconds before I rushed into the ocean and began swimming off my desires, cramps be damned. Man, the original Goku must have just been asexual instead of brain damaged. My body had no problem reacting to my naughty thoughts. Now, if only my growth spurt would come earlier than 1720 like it did for him, that would be nice. A couple hours later, Turtle appeared on the horizon. There appeared to be someone on his back. Hey, you guys. This is my master. He's here to give you a gift. Master Roshi the turtle hermit walked off his underling's back and onto the beach. He looked exactly as I remembered him. Bald head, white beard, sunglasses, tropical outfit, wooden staff, turtle shell on his back. Hello. I am Master Roshi. I'm very thankful that you helped my companion return home. It was nothing, really, I said. If you want to thank us, you can give us your Dragon Ball, Bulma said, pointing to the orb hanging by a string around his neck. Huh? This old bauble. If you want it, you can have it. Now I won't have to give up the magic carpet. Yes. Bulma cried as he handed it over. She rushed over to her bag, bending over to put the Dragon Ball inside. Rashi got a nosebleed appreciating the view, which I took issue at. Sure, I'd been ogling her too, but she was young enough to be his granddaughter. Great-great-granddaughter actually, given the fact he was over 300 years old. I flexed my aura, powering up to the maximum. The wind picked up even as the air seemed to grow heavy, and ripples went out into the water as a white glow surrounded me. I wonder how my grandpa would feel knowing that his wise and venerable old master was perving on a 16-year-old, I said threateningly. No harm in looking, he countered, even as he sweat bullets. Running into someone even stronger than King Piccolo must be freaking him out on the inside. I toned down the energy, returning to normal. Well, look somewhere else, I said, before turning to Bulma. She was staring at me with the oddest look in her eyes. It wasn't until much later that it occurred to me that a powerful, shirtless man defending her honor might have an effect on her. Bulma and I got dressed and flew off, leaving a gaping Master Roshi and embarrassed Turtle. We wound up collecting all the other Dragon Balls that very day with me flying us from place to place. The 5th we got by beating up Oolong and returning the kidnapped daughters to their village. The 6th was retrieved from the Ox King, who was just about to send out his daughter Kai Kai to collect the Bancho fan from Master Roshi. I offered instead to fly around their castle so fast I created a vacuum, choking the flames. The 2 heartily congratulated me and freely offered the Dragon Ball from their treasury. Bulma got very rude with Kai Kai for some reason. The 7th was retrieved from Pilaf's palace. Wanting to avert future hijinks, I looked the little blue man dead in the eye with my most threatening aura and told him that if he ever went looking for the Dragon Balls again, I'd kill him. By the time the sun set, Bulma and I were looking down at the 7 Dragon Balls. They're beautiful, Bulma said softly, looking down on them. They are, I said, looking at her more than the gems. I looked down at them before she noticed, or at least I thought I did. So, how do we summon the dragon? Bulma cleared her throat. She called out in a clear voice, enunciating carefully Arise Shenron, and grant me a wish. The Dragon Balls glowed until they were impossible to look at. The sky darkened as thunder and lightning appeared from nowhere. Out of the light, a winding green dragon emerged, disappearing and reappearing into the clouds, before coming down to face the 2 of us, his winding form behind him. You who have summoned me, I will grant you one wish, it said in a voice of fire and ash. Bulma hesitated, obviously scared by the dragon in her face, so I took over. We wish for a portable, self-powered computer loaded with all the information in the universe and an easy-to-use search interface. I wanted to cover all the bases. No point of getting all the knowledge if we couldn't use it. The dragon, Shenron, tilted its head. In a flash of light, a laptop appeared on the ground before us. Your wish has been granted. With that, it dissolved into light as the 7 Dragon Balls floated into the air. In a blast, they were scattered, sent to the corners of the world. I flew as fast as I could and managed to catch each of them before they made it 5 miles. There. Now we don't have to go looking if we want to make another wish in a year, I said, touching down with her duffel bag stuffed in my arms. Bulma was gaping at me. Goku, thank you. Just thank you. It was nothing. She grinned and grabbed the laptop. I'm going to be studying this thing as much as the stuff inside it. What powers it? How does it have so much memory in such a small space? What coding does it use? How about just asking it? It has all the answers in it, shouldn't it? I pointed out. Oh, right. Bulma hit the power button. A simple search bar appeared on the screen. Let's try Son Goku, she said playfully, typing in my name. She hit the enter key. The next page showed a 3D model of me, along with an encyclopedic listing of information about me. Wow, it really has everything. She gaped. I skimmed the page, my cheeks dusting pink. Including the size of my penis. And the fact I used to wet the bed. That's fun. Bulma was blushing too. Well, we did wish for every fact there was. It's part of you. Well, let's try looking you up. No way. We fought over the archive for a bit as we decided to name it later. Then Bulma brought out the capsule house and we went to sleep. Well, I went to sleep. As I curled up on the carpet, I could hear Bulma typing and clicking, delving deeper and deeper into the store of knowledge. I woke up blearily, aware of someone poking me. Goku? Goku? Goku, wake up. Was it? I asked, yawning and sitting up. Bulma was crouched by me, eyes oddly bright. The archive isn't just an encyclopedia, it's an answer machine. If you type in a question, it'll just give the answer or redirect you to the relevant page. That's nice, I said, rubbing my eyes. Did you really have to wake me up to tell me that? Yes, I did. Because guess what came up when I typed in who is Bulma's perfect boyfriend? I froze. My mind reeled. No way. No way, no way, no way. Prince Vegeta. I asked as much as said. She rolled her eyes. No, you lovable goon. It's you. Really? I asked, my voice going oddly high as it always did when I was nervous. Well, technically it said Sol 4829A 1826M0683Q0175G, but when I searched for that it came up as you. Bulma grinned. You know what this means, right? That we can be very happy together, I said, my mouth splitting into a grin. Once I processed the shock, or rather shoved it into a dark corner of my mind to deal with later, I was elated. What do you know, I had found my soulmate. Yes, it does. Bulma got a downright hungry look. It also means I don't have to worry about doing this. Before I knew what was going on, she was kissing me. I was overwhelmed by the taste of strawberries, the warmth of her body, the scent of her in my nose. My body moved on instinct, reaching up to cup her face. The kiss lasted a full minute. Her tongue was just starting to tease my lips when I pulled back. Bulma, are you sure about this? I mean, we barely know each other. She rolled her eyes. Doesn't matter. I want it, you want it, why not? Who better to lose it to than your perfect match? Oh, believe me, I want it, I said. I just don't want you to regret this. We can take this slow, work up to it. Dates and talking and rounding the bases. We don't have to do it right here and now if you don't want to. She grinned. That little speech right there, that's exactly why I'm okay doing it right here and now. You're a good guy, Goku. I know we're both young, but you're my friend. Besides, I want to do this now. I want this perfect day to have a perfect ending. I want to be stupid and make love with a boy I trust, even though I don't really know him that well. I want you. Her words electrified me. Bulma, I sighed, leaning in for another kiss. How could I say no to that? We made out for a while, getting intimately familiar with each other's tongues. Our hands roamed from time to time, feeling out each other's bodies. She made to pull at my clothes, but they refused to budge. I chuckled. Let me do that for you. So fast I was a blur, I took off my shirt and pants, folded them, and laid them down so they wouldn't break the floor. I stood before in nothing but my black briefs, my tail poking out a hole and the front tinted with my arousal. Her eyes were locked on my body. God, you're gorgeous. You look better than a model. Why, thank you. I worked really hard to look like this, I grinned saucily. Why don't we take this to the bed and I can see you in your underwear, She gave a smile, confident and sexy, no fear. She had absolute faith that I was perfect for her. Without a word, she turned and walked towards the bedroom. As she did, she pulled off her shirt and shimmied out of her skirt. I trailed behind her, my tongue dragging along the floor. Her ass was sublime, a perfect peach teasing me from behind tight pink panties. We hopped onto her king-sized bed. Our difference in height would have made things awkward if we weren't so carried away with teenage lust. I dipped her back, leaned over, plundering her mouth with my own. With slow movements, meant not to startle, I cupped her cheek before trailing it down her neck, before cupping one of her mouth-watering breasts in my hand. It was a perfect fit, even though we both still had some growing to do. She moaned as I rotated my wrist, gently massaging her sweet teat with calloused fingers through the thin cotton of her bra. "Is this expensive?" I asked after a few minutes. "Why?" she questioned, looking up with me with lidded eyes. "Well, I wanted to make sure you wouldn't mind if I did this." With as much effort as she'd used to tear paper, I ripped the dastardly device keeping her chest contained in two. "Oh. You can do that whenever you like. It's sexy," she moaned, as my palms finally made contact with soft, delicate skin. I dipped my head. "Good to know," I muttered before taking her nipple into my mouth. I suckled and licked and groped, accompanied by the melody of Bulma's moans and cries. I played her body like a flute, taking pleasure from giving pleasure, my cock growing heavy and aching as I tasted and molded her body to my desires. I dipped my tail down below, rubbing her pearly gates through her cute little panties. "Bulma, you're so wet. Are you wet just for me? Is all that juice for your Saiyan lover?" I asked roughly, slipping into dirty talk on some primal impulse. "Yes. Yes, it is," she moaned, almost screaming. I leaned up to give her a quick kiss before moving down her body until my head was at the junction of her thighs. I inhaled deeply of the bouquet of her arousal before ripping her panties off with the same casual ferocity I'd used on her brassiere. She yelped before shrieking as I leaned in to feast on her honey. My tongue was numb and my jaw was aching before I had my fill of her. I'd driven her to 3 orgasms and I was filled with male pride as she trembled and screamed beneath my ministrations. "Goku. Please. I want you," she huffed, coming down off her most recent high. "Your wish is my command, Bulma," I said, slipping out of my soaked underwear. Between her dripping liquids and my leaking precum, I was as lubricated as I needed to be. I teased her nether lips with the head of my throbbing manhood. "You want this?" "Yes." "Where do you want it, Bulma?" "Inside." "Inside what?" I asked, teasing her even as I gave some soft thrusts, not enough to penetrate, but enough to make her feel me. "Inside my pussy. I want your fat hard dick inside my slutty cunt. You happy?" she demanded, locking eyes with me over an embarrassed blush. I leaned down to kiss her stomach as I flexed my hips and finally entered her. "Ecstatic," I moaned. "Soft as silk, warm as pie, tight as a vice." Bulma's snatch molded around my invading prick like it was made just for me. There was a small bit of resistance, but I pushed through implacably until I was buried to the root. We waited there, just breathing, as she made me a man and I made her a woman. "Can I move?" I asked, desperate for sensation even as I was stimulated to the brink just by being inside. "Yeah," came her reply. She cupped the back of my head, even as her legs came up to wrap around my waist. "Move, Goku." I began to thrust in and out, in the ageless rhythm so many first lovers had discovered before. I pushed deep and hard, my balls coming up to slap her ass, the tip of my erection poking at the gates of her womb. Then I withdrew, harsh and fast, the slip and slide of her heavenly warmth against my cock, driving me crazy with desire and euphoria. She sang for me, cooing and yipping, and vocalizing, as my efforts drove her to new heights and peaks of ecstasy. I never wanted it to end, but all good things must. "Bulma, I'm close. Where do you want it?" "Inside. I want to feel you inside me." "Is it safe?" I managed to ask, even as I bucked harder at her words. Yes, now just do it. Fill me up. Make me yours," she demanded as only an heiress could. "Then here it is." I grunted, pressing my pelvis flush to hers as I erupted, my seed shooting out deep within her body. "Bulma. Goku." We panted in the afterglow, my sated member sliding out of her slit as I crawled up her body to peck her lips and lie my head on her shoulder. We cuddled, her arms coming up to hold me even as I wrapped her in my own. "That was," she huffed. "Perfect," I offered. "Yes. It was perfect," she said, sleepy and content. I waited a few seconds before asking the question burning in my mind. "Want to do it again?" "What?" she cried, looking down at me. I rubbed my awakening rod against the creamy smoothness of her side. "I have a lot of stamina," I said simply. Neither of us got much sleep that night. But it was worth it. I snuggled my head closer to the wonderful pillow it was on. I didn't want to wake up. I had the most amazing dream last night. Bulma came onto me and we had steaming interspecies sex all night long. "Goku, you're poking me. Didn't you get enough last night?" came an exhausted whimper. My eyes shot open. Not a dream. definitely not a dream. Or else there was a pretty weird explanation for how I had ended up naked in Bulma's bed and spooning her. Sorry, I said absently, tilting my lower half away so my morning wood wouldn't disturb the brunette in my arms. I get that you're, like, superhuman or not even human at all, but I am. I need some rest after all that. It was my first time, you know. First 7 times, actually, I corrected, my mouth splitting to reach my ears as my ego inflated at the memory. Yeah, you're God in bed. I'm still sore like you wouldn't believe. I frowned. I laid my hand over her, cupping her in my hands. What did I just say? She asked pissily, turning to glare at me. SHH. Relax. I'm fixing it, I said. I focused intently, reaching my kai through her skin to feel the damage. With some delicate gentle coaxing, I got her body to heal itself, speeding up the natural process with my own energy. What did you just do? She asked. Eye healing. I'm not very good at it, it's very light, sensitive work. I wouldn't be able to fix a broken bone or heart attack, but muscle soreness is easy enough. I did it for Grandpa when he got tired from all our spars. She turned around, giving me a kiss. You're amazing. You know that, right? I try, I said, smiling. Now, unless you're ready for round 8, we should probably get dressed. Yeah, Bulma said, stretching out in bed in a display I couldn't look away from. We need to get the archive safely to Capsule Core. Not to mention the Dragon Balls. They're just stone right now, but they still need to be protected. I gulped. Plus I have to meet your parents. That should be fun. Relax. They don't need to know what we did. I'll just introduce you as my friend. Yeah, but how am I going to look your dad in the eye? Bulma blew an errant lock of hair out of her face. How should I know? I've never had to meet a boyfriend's parents after having sex before. Your support is overwhelming, sweetheart, I said in a deadpan. She blew me a kiss. We got dressed, capsuled the house, and then flew to West City. The archive and the duffel bag with the Dragon Balls were tucked safely in Bulma's arms as I carried her through the air. We touched down in a spacious estate in the heart of the city. Welcome to the Briefs mansion, Bulma said, sweeping a hand at the huge building. Is this a house or a headquarters? I asked, marveling at the sheer amount of room her family had carved out of the urban center. A bit of both. There's an office downtown, but Daddy tends to bring his work home with him. In short order, I was introduced to Bulma's cartoon housewife of a mother, Panchi, and her absent-minded father, Briefs. We enjoyed an impromptu brunch where Bulma regaled her parents with tales of her adventure, and I tried to keep my head down and focus on the food. Dr. Briefs was fascinated by the archive, and I knew that he and Bulma were going to vanish into the lab afterwards to examine it. Goku, why don't you explore the city or the house? Daddy and I have work to do, my lover said once help appeared to take away the dishes. Sure. Just promise that you'll make a gravity chamber a priority. Bulma grinned and kissed my cheek. My eyes darted to her parents, but they didn't blink. Must be my diminutive size working in my favor. As fast as I can build one. I promise. I spent a few days lounging on the couch, finding out what was on TV before the promised gravity chamber was built. In that time, I got to develop a taste for professional catering as I was treated to the 5-star meals made by the kitchen staff. If I wasn't careful, I'd get back all the baby fat I'd worked so hard to burn off. I tried talking to Panchi, but Bulma had clearly gotten her brains from her father, if you know what I mean. I had no money and no desire to mooch off my girlfriend and her family any more than I already was by asking, so I didn't really explore the city. The evenings were the highlight of my days because Bulma usually made it to dinner. We'd talk about what amazing finds she and her father had teased out of the archive that day and get to know each other better while her parents watched with smiling faces. And every night, if I snuck out of my room after dark and back in before dawn, well, nobody called me out on it. Bulma sure wasn't complaining. After a week in West City, Bulma came to find me and brought me to a dome-shaped building that hadn't been there when we arrived. Here you go, my little warrior. Best we could do on short notice. It goes up all the way to 100x Earth's natural gravity. That should keep you busy until we can take the time to upgrade it, shouldn't it? I looked up at her with pride. Thanks, baby. This is just what I needed. I flew up a couple feet to give her a kiss before dropping back to waist height. Bulma giggled. Just make sure you aren't late for dinner. I didn't build this for you just to lose you to it. I know how much you love to train, but I still want to spend time with my boyfriend every day. I promise, I said solemnly. In fact, if you aren't busy, I was wondering if I could take you out tonight. Really? In an instant my genius turned into a blushing schoolgirl. She brought her hands to her cheeks and toyed with her hair and everything. Well, this is all very sudden but okay. When will you pick me up? Let's say 8. That gives us an hour after dinner to get ready. What should I wear? Where are we going? That's a surprise, I said, winking. Just dress warm, we'll be outdoors. Got it. Giggling up a storm, Bulma walked away, either to daydream about our date or get back to her father, I couldn't tell. Smiling after her and admiring the view from behind, I turned and entered the room. It was bare, about 100 feet in diameter, just an empty half-sphere with recessed lighting and a reinforced tile floor. I found the control panel on the far wall and worked out how to use it simply enough. Taking a deep breath, I turned the dial to 10x Earth and hit the activation key. For the first time in my life, I had to struggle just to stand up straight. It probably didn't help that I was still wearing weighted clothing, but I was never one to back down from a challenge. I took a minute to do some simple stretches, feeling the burn of exertion just from these simple movements. With a grin, my Saiyan blood pumping hot in my veins, I started to train. I spent the next 10 hours training, alternating between an hour of effort and an hour of meditation and cool down so I didn't collapse. I spent 3 of the working hours doing calisthenics as advanced as I could handle with the added gravity and 2 sparring against a multiform. I had managed to tune the technique so that we were a 40-60 split instead of dead even. I had hopes that fighting an opponent stronger than me, even if it was just a Kai clone, would activate the Zenkai boost aspect of my DNA. The meditation was spent practicing my Kai healing on myself and trying to expand my senses so I could feel further and in more detail. I could already generally sense the planet at large, but I wanted to be able to follow the path of an ant on the opposite side of the world. I also guided an energy ball up, down, and around the room, keeping it slow and controlled, rather than letting it fly fast as it could. At 6, I came out of the gravity chamber, stinking to high heaven, but with a smile on my face. I'd gotten a lot of good work done. I already felt lighter in normal Earth gravity. A few months of pushing myself, upping the gravity whenever things got too easy, and my power level would soar. I might just pull a whiz and win the World Martial Arts Tournament with one finger. I was already stronger than Raditz, just how far could I climb before my dear brother showed up? I had about 12 years before the events of Dragon Ball Z kicked off. That was a lot of time to train, especially armed as I was with the truth of just how high I could go. I wasn't saying that I'd reach God of Destruction level before the alien invasion started. But there was no reason not to try, right? Though I might need to use a wish to make Kai from this planet undetectable, lest I attract unwanted attention should I climb too high. Speaking of wishes, would the archive have information on how to upgrade the dragon statue in Kami's lookout so we could get more wishes from Shenron? I still yet to spend much time with it, Bulma and Briefs hugging it for the most part. I also wanted to look up Kai techniques. I was especially interested to see if there was some way to beat the bad out of bad guys. Some technique that would banish the evil from a person's soul without splitting them like Kami had with Piccolo. That would definitely come in handy facing off against the villains of the universe. After all, the best way to defeat an enemy was to make them your friend. I had plenty of time to worry about all that. What I should be focusing on now was my date with Bulma. I showered and created clothes a bit fancier than my usual training uniform, a button-up and jeans. Panchi commented on how handsome I looked as the 4 of us sat down to dinner. I blushed and accepted the compliment, though the woman whose opinion I really wanted had to keep silent lest we give ourselves away. It kind of sucked, having to hide our relationship. But it also made it feel naughty and hot, so I was okay with it. After dinner, I checked with the kitchen to see if they'd prepared the package I'd asked for that morning. They had, and so I waited until the appropriate time before flying up to Bulma's window and knocking on the glass. "Goku?" she asked, opening the portal. I grinned. Would my lovely lady care to be swept away for a romantic picnic beneath the stars? Her face lit up. I would love that. The picnic basket held safely by my tail, I held out my arms and helped guide Bulma into the bridal carry we normally used when flying. Once she was secure, I turned us toward the mountains and sped off, Bulma shrieking as I accelerated faster than I ever had before. She nearly caused us to crash when she started to kiss my neck, but I swerved at the last minute and continued on. I don't know if she even noticed. She was a real firecracker, my Bulma. I still couldn't believe that I was lucky enough to be with her. We landed on the summit of Mount Paozu, a place I was intimately familiar with. It also had one of the best views in the world, as far as I was concerned. Wow. You can see for miles. And there's so many stars in the sky, Bulma gaped as I set up the picnic blanket. I thought you'd like it. Now, which would you like? Strawberries, chocolate, cheesecake. How about a drink first? Okay. I popped the cork on a bottle of sparkling cider, pouring some into a glass with barely any spillage. We settled down on the blanket, eating the goodies and just talking, being together without any barriers or masks. The background of the star-filled sky and the moonlit valley around the mountain was nothing compared to Bulma's beauty. At least that was my opinion. Bulma leaned back on her hands, looking up at the cosmos. I look at them differently now. The stars. I asked to clarify, wondering at the topic change. Yeah. Knowing there's life out there really makes it different. She looked over to me. I wonder if we can see Vegeta's star from here. I honestly have no idea, I said. Not that I really care, anyway. My home is here. Bulma grinned and looked back at the sky. She finally seemed to notice one crucial detail. Wait a minute, it's a full moon. I grinned. Don't worry. I've mastered Izaru completely. I don't change unless I want to. Bulma regarded me with the bright eyes of a scientist. Can I see? Pretty please. I shrugged. Sure. I unbuttoned my shirt and slid off my pants. Why are you getting naked? Not that I mind, she tacked on, looking me up and down while licking her lips. I smirked as I slid out of my briefs, standing before her in all my glory. I don't want to rip them when I grow, that's why. Oh, right, that makes sense, she said absently. Wow, you're really a grower, not a shower, huh? I blushed but didn't cover myself. Hey, give me a break. It's cold. And I'm only 13, I'll remind you. Please don't. I feel like a cradle-robbing perv when I think about it. Then I look at you and you're just so manly I forget. I chuckled. Then I focused and looked up at the moon. I relaxed the steel control I'd kept on the slumbering giant inside me just a tad, letting him come to the surface and reform my body. But I maintained my will, my ability to reason, my suppression of my full power. I would not give those up to him. In seconds, it was done, and I was large enough to fit Bulma in the palm of my hand. Ta-da! I said, waving my hands and tail down at my girl. Wow. That's amazing. Bulma gaped. Makes no sense from my current understanding of biology, but it's cool. I shrugged. Yeah, I guess. But it's also dangerous. Most Saiyans, from what I can tell, never gain this level of control over it. They turn into mindless berserkers. Yeah, but you're special. I rubbed the back of my head. I'd say I'm just more stubborn than is good for me. She shook her head. Humble to a fault. You can't even take a compliment, can you? I just don't want to let it go to my head. I'm not better than anyone else. Stronger, faster, nicer, maybe. But not better. She smiled gently up at me. Turn back now. You're too big to kiss. I shrunk back down, rejecting the blood's waves with an effort of focus until I stood naked before her in my base form. While I'd been changing, she'd slipped out of her clothes. Her nipples were peaked from the cold and she shivered as much from the air as my lusty gaze. I tackled her, wrapping her in my arms and tangling the blanket around us, brushing the basket off into the distance to worry about later. I never did end up returning that blanket. I kept it as a memento of the night Bulma saw me as a monster and looked at me with love in her eyes still. The months passed in a blur of training, stretching my limits to the breaking point and then doing the exact same thing the next day, only with the difficulty raised. I took one day off a week to give my weary body a chance to rest, which wound up becoming date night. Bulma usually left them up to me, and I'd come up with simple gestures that took advantage of my powers to arrange. Every now and then, though, she took me out on the town and spent money like it came from a board game, and I enjoyed life as a trophy boyfriend to a billionaire's daughter. Movie premieres, fancy parties, concerts. And I only embarrassed her about one time out of 3. Every now and then, though, I took a break from training to go on field trips as I like to call them. I wandered through the Diablo Desert, waiting for Yamcha to take the bait. I could sense that he was close by, hiding behind a sand dune behind me. I'd packed a backpack and filled it with rocks to give it a bulging appearance, to make me seem like a juicier target. Now I just had to wait for him to come at me. Any minute now. Just give it a second. Right about now. Halt. Yamcha shouted, riding in on a hoverback, leaping from it to stand before me, pure hovering behind his shoulder. Finally, I muttered to myself. Took him long enough. I am Yamcha, the desert bandit. Hand over your valuables and nobody needs to get hurt, the teenager demanded, getting into an aggressive stance. I shrugged off the backpack. Yeah, about that. I don't have anything on me. I do have an offer for you, though. The thief's eyes narrowed. Oh? What's that? We fight, right here and now. You win, I'll give you 1,000,000 zeni. I win, you train with this guy I know, and we have a rematch at the World Martial Arts Tournament. Oh, and you give up the whole bandit thing. And Pure teaches me how to do the shapeshifting technique. The anthropomorphic flying cat tilted his head. How did he know? Who cares? I'm going to take his money and then his life. You're on, kid. I nodded and as my head was down he struck. Wolfang fist. I channeled Kai throughout my body and he went from speeding at me to moving in slow motion. I walked forward, tilting my head to avoid his fist and gave a light jab to his solar plexus. His forward momentum met and overcome, Yamcha fell to the sand. He managed to puke up the contents of his stomach just before he passed out. Yamcha. Yamcha. Pure shouted. The high-voiced feline shook his companion's shoulder. Don't worry, he's alive. Now about the shapeshift. I spent an hour with Pure, working out the kinks and intricacies of a technique that let you physically change form. As I'd suspected, since even weaklings like Pure and Oolong could do it, it had more to do with finesse than power. You basically had to take control of the frame of your Kai and mold it into a different shape. The body would follow. After a few simple experiments, where I managed not to lose a toe or get permanently stuck as a watering can, I figured I had it down. Thanks Pure. Now, you might want to hop on. We'll be flying a lot faster than you're used to. I heaved Yamcha's limp form into a fireman's carry, made sure Pure had a good grip, and rocketed off. Within an hour, I was touching down by a beach before a pink shack with the words "Came House" written above the door. Master Roshi. I shouted. Hey? Oh, it's you Goku. What in the world are you doing here? The aged hermit asked as he came out the door. I indicated Yamcha on the sand. I want you to take this guy on as a student. I have a feeling he's got real potential. Roshi stroked his beard and regarded the both of us from behind his sunglasses. I'm sorry to say, Goku, but I've already taken on a student. A young monk named Krillin. You can handle too, I argued. Sorry, kid, it's against my policy. I sighed. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, even though I'd mentally prepared myself for it. Using my newly learned shapeshifting, I transformed into a buxom blonde bombshell lifted straight off a pin-up. Roshi's jaw dropped to the floor. Won't you please train my friend? Master Roshi. I purred, fighting the urge to puke while I put on my performance. Of course I will. He shouted to the heavens, blood spurting from his nose, as he charged at me to give me a hug or maybe to grope me. In a flash and a puff of smoke, I returned to base form and shot up into the sky. When I was halfway to the stratosphere, I turned direction and made for West City. I'm going to need a shower, I shuddered, utterly traumatized. Still, I had accomplished something today. Yamcha would get some serious training and start the path to maybe being a useful ally one day. And I had gotten my hands on a nifty ability with applications limited only by my imagination. It might end up being little more than a party trick, but I wouldn't know until I got to experimenting. Could I shapeshift into a healthy body while injured? Did becoming a muscle-bound giant give me comparable gains in strength? And let's not discount turning limbs into weapons. I was eager to find out all that and more. Bulma, when she learned of my new trick, had quite a different take on it. Let's just say I did a lot of my shapeshifting practice in the bedroom and leave it at that. I stood at the base of Korin Tower. The column extended up into the sky, the top so far away it was beyond my sight. I had already met Bora and Yupa, and the two guardians had deemed me worthy of attempting the climb. I felt the two of them watching me, waiting for me to embark on one of the toughest physical challenges in the world. Well, time to see if all that gravity training was doing anything. I clicked a stopwatch, and then I powered up to my max and took off. I started off by jumping up, making it a good 100 feet before I got close to the tower. Then it was climbing, foot then hand, foot then hand. I moved as fast as I could, fighting against the resistance of the wind and the pull of my weighted clothing. My blood roared in my ears as I energized every cell of my body with Kai. I kept at it, never relenting, until I finally reached the top of the tower and climbed onto the entrance platform. I powered down and checked the stopwatch. 4 minutes 50 seconds, I read. I'll have to do this again when Bulma makes those gravity belts. It's a great workout, I mused, catching my breath after the intense exertion. I was already up to 30x Earth's gravity in the chamber, so the day-long climb for most was just a quick sprint for me. I climbed higher into the guts of the tower until I reached the main floor, where I was met by a white cat with a walking stick. He was sweating buckets and seemed to be cowering before me. Are you okay? The cat paused, seeming to stare at me through his closed eyes. Oh, wow. Psychic and pure of heart, if not necessarily in body. So you aren't here to challenge me for the title of God of Martial Arts? I shook my head. No. I'm here for 3 things. A few senzu beans, the ultra-divine water, and a lesson on mind reading. Korin frowned. I'll give you the beans. I have dozens of them saved up, no harm in giving you some. But the ultra-divine water is far too dangerous. I won't allow you to throw your life away drinking it. And it takes years and years of meditation to even begin to peer into the minds of others. I shrugged. I'm not asking for you to let me stay until I get the hang of it, just point me in the right direction. And as for the water, if I promise not to drink it, could I at least get a sample of it? Korin rubbed a paw along his nose. Oh, that's clever. You're going to have your lady friend use that gift from Shenron and the dose I give you to recreate it or even improve on it. Well, best of luck, but not everything can be broken down by mere science. With your vow not to drink the actual ultra-divine water, I'll agree to give you a drop. As for the knockoffs, that'll be at your own risk. That sounds reasonable, I agreed. As for telepathy, I suppose there's no harm in covering the basics. I got a very confusing lecture on retreating inwards while also looking outwards, how the mind was the most complex thing in the universe, and many other platitudes and bits of wisdom, but I managed to get the gist. It required a truly daunting amount of focus and willpower, combined with delicate spiritual awareness, but mind reading was the art of sensing the structure and makeup of a person's chi, and the millions of tiny fluctuations in it to make out or hear their stream of consciousness. Corin was right, it could take years to develop a knack for doing it, let alone mid-combat. But I was determined to know what my opponent was doing almost before they did. You couldn't put a price on the advantage that would bring to a fight. With a bow of thanks, and with a bag containing a handful of beans as well as a corked vial, I jumped off the edge of the tower, switching to flight before I reached the ground and returning to my home at the Briefs mansion. Hopefully Bulma would find a way to mass-produce Enzu beans and work out the precise function of the ultra-divine water. A way to instantly heal from damage would speed up my training exponentially, and I was curious about the water and its power to unlock potential. Every little bit helped in my quest to become the strongest being alive, after all. Bulma, you're being a little overprotective. I'll be fine. No. She shouted, standing between me and the archive. I won't let you run off and get yourself killed. Darling, baby, light of my life, I'm both bulletproof and faster than a speeding bullet. I won't be in any danger. This is just an afternoon errand. She grit her teeth. Taking on the Red Ribbon Army is not an errand, it's suicide. We'd been arguing for almost an hour now, going in circles. I'd try to convince her I'd be alright, she'd deny me vehemently. She had grown up hearing horror stories of the Red Ribbon Army, she wasn't able to get past that ingrained fear to realize that with my power, I could take them all on blindfolded and win. Bulma, listen to me. I'm not doing this to be a hero or to test my strength or anything like that. I'm doing this to protect you, I tried, going with a different tack. What reason would the RRA possibly have for coming after me? I don't know, maybe those, I said, pointing at the safe in the wall where the Dragon Balls were stored. She grit her teeth. No one knows they're here. But someone could build their own dragon radar. The energy they give off is distinct, you know that. Once they wake up after the year-long break, any mid-range spectrometer will be able to pick them up. The Red Ribbon Army is all about power, getting it and abusing it. The odds of at least one of the higher-ups knowing the legend and coming after them at some point are really high. I frowned. Besides, I'm not okay with waiting another day and letting who knows how many people suffer when I could do something about it. Goku, Bulma said, looking torn. Please, Bulma. I looked her dead in the eye, hoping she'd see that there was no talking me out of this. I could have just taken the archive and run, but I wouldn't betray her trust like that. If you get so much as a scratch, you will be in so much trouble, she finally relented, standing aside. Thank you. I promised to come back in the same physically flawless condition as when I left, I said, trying to make a joke out of it. She blushed. Knew I shouldn't have let you read my diary. I took out a map and a pen and typed a simple question into the archive. Where are the Red Ribbon Army's forces? I was shown a map of a world with a little red dot for each soldier. I worked out all the major bases from the heaviest concentrations. A dozen clusters wiped out should be enough for the whole organization to crumble. I'll be back in time for dinner, I promised. And then I went through the 8 different doors locking the inner sanctum of Capsule Corps from the rest of the world. How Dr. Briefs had gotten permission from the city to construct a bunker that could survive a nuclear warhead under his house was beyond me. I suspected either he hadn't told anyone or there had been a lot of bribery involved. Either way, the most bleeding-edge inventions and research, as well as valuables like the archive and the Dragon Balls, were stored there. Sure, I could break in if I really wanted to. But that would just be rude. Plus, going through all the different layers of security was kind of fun, like being in a spy movie. I spent the rest of the day exercising my right as a walking weapon of mass destruction to wipe out a paramilitary operation. I'd fly to a base, knock out all the men and blow up all the weapons, then tie them all up with rope conjured with the matter creation technique and fire a Kai blast into the air to draw the attention of local authorities. I went all over the globe, from snowy tundra to blistering desert and even to a base hidden inside a mountain. I'm pretty sure that was Dr. Jiro's lab, given all the robotics equipment and the bald guy with a bushy mustache who raved about the importance of his work once he woke up and found himself tied up. In the end, I found and immobilized every major officer and about 80% of the cannon fodder, as well as blowing up every piece of hardware I could find. The next day, King Furry made a global announcement. He disclosed that in a major sting operation, the world military had made a major assault on the Red Ribbon Army and detained the majority of their people. Bulma and I watched with amused grins as the animal-type Earthline waxed on about the courage and bravery of the men and women who had engaged in the operation, when we both know they'd just been the cleanup crew. Still, I wasn't surprised that someone else took credit for my work. I didn't really care. Like I'd told Bulma, it wasn't about grandstanding or making a name for myself. I just wanted the RRA gone. That should nip a few potential disasters in the bud. The day wound up being declared a holiday, Scissors Day, in memory of when the red ribbon had been cut. My life wasn't entirely consumed by training and Bulma. I kept faithful correspondence with Grandpa Gohan, the Ox King and Kai Kai, and the Turtle Hermit School. I was sure to only be platonic and proper when I wrote to the Princess of the Ox Kingdom. I was with Bulma, after all. That path was, as far as I could tell, blocked off. Even if Bulma and I separated for some reason, I'm not sure if I could just fall in love and marry Kai Kai just because an alternate version of me had. I wanted her in my life, but just as a friend, maybe even just a pen pal for a little while. Still, the primary focus of my time was on building myself stronger, faster, better. As I expected, Bulma's natural genius and the power of the archive had led to her cracking the Senzu bean genome. She isolated the enzyme that had such miraculous healing properties and found a way to synthesize it. Capsule Corps revolutionized the medical industry when it started to make sage pills, virtual panaceas that healed every trauma and a great many diseases. Bulma was heralded as a genius, getting a number of accolades and awards. I was every bit the congratulating boyfriend afterwards, getting her gifts and satisfying her every whim. And then I cranked my training up to 11, popping sage pills like candy as I set the gravity as high as I could stand it and had my multiform stop holding back. Didn't matter if I broke bones or even got blasted through the abdomen, so long as I could pop a little green pill before I passed out. I may have pushed the boundaries of reasonable safety a lot further than I should have. I was just thankful there weren't any cameras in the gravity chamber, or else Bulma would have my head. You couldn't deny that it was effective though. By the evening of April 15, 750, between natural gains and Zenkai boosts, my power level cracked into 60,000. I was now half the strength of Captain Jinyu, the strongest underling in Frieza's army. Not bad for a kid about to turn 14. I showered and went down to dinner with the family. I'd really bonded with Panchi and Dr. Briefs in the 7 months I'd been here, to say nothing of the bond between Bulma and me. I almost felt like part of the family. We were eating, Bulma and I playing footsie under the table, when Panchi spoke up. "Oh, Goku dear, I almost forgot to ask you. When is your birthday? I was planning one for my kitten and it occurred to me that we didn't know yours." I stopped what I was doing, my fork held halfway to my mouth. I hesitantly set it down, anticipating an explosion. Well, do you really need to know? Grandpa and I never really celebrated it. It's just another day to me. Bulma frowned, leaning forward. "Goku, come on, when is it? We just want to know the day." "Yeah, but then you'll want to throw a big party and invite lots of people, and I'm not really interested in that." Dr. Briefs chuckled. "Please, Goku. Of course we'll respect your wishes if you don't want a big celebration. But please tell us so we can do something. It's not every day our daughter's boyfriend turns 14. Bulma and I both turned the shade of ripe tomatoes. "You know," she screeched as only a teenage girl could. "Bulma, honey, your mother and I aren't blind. We see the way you two look at each other. The love is like a neon sign." He frowned behind his mustache. "And the fact that you sneak into each other's rooms every night. Can't say I'm too happy about that, but you're both responsible kids and I'm sure you're being safe and careful even when you're doing the things teenagers in relationships do." "Oh, they are, dear. I refilled Bulma's prescription myself. She's been right on top of it." Panchi chimed in. "Please, kill me now. My potential in-laws were talking about my sex life. It's tomorrow." "Okay. My birthday is tomorrow." I blurted out. "Tomorrow?" they exclaimed. All three of them. I looked from the shocked eyes of Panchi and Briefs to the accusing look coming from Bulma. Like I said, I don't really celebrate it. I was hoping it could just pass by unnoticed. Without a word, Bulma got up and left. The door slammed behind her when she got up the stairs. I winced. Damn. That didn't go well. "Well, you know what to do about it, don't you?" Briefs asked leadingly. "Yes, you have to," Panchi said. "Go to her," she finished just as Dr. Briefs said, "give her space." I left the two of them to their bickering in the wake of that. I went to my room and took a peek with my Kai sense into Bulma's. She was sad but not crying, laid out on her bed. I sighed and set about making my apology gift. A half hour later, I flew to her window and knocked. It took a couple minutes, but she got up and came over, opened the window. "What?" she asked in a dull, I do not care at all tone. I winced. It was worse than I thought. "I'm really sorry. I didn't think about how you would feel about me hiding it, I was just selfish and wanted to avoid a big fuss." "Apology accepted. Anything else?" she asked, clearly still fuming. I brought my hand from behind my back to offer my present. "Yes. Would you accept this as a token of my love?" She blinked and focused on what I was holding. Is that what I think it is? I rubbed the back of my head. Well, people say you should get a girl roses or diamonds. I decided to do both. She took the crystal bloom from me, regarding it. A stem, 2 leaves, and a blossom with full petals, all clear as glass and sparkling in the light. Where did you even get this? A stone big enough to cut this from would go for billions. I shrugged. I can make cloth out of kai, why not rocks? Very pretty rocks, but it's still just a rock. I only took so long because I had to practice getting the cut just right. There's a few dozen carats of diamonds just laying on the floor of my room right now. She broke out into giggles. Goku, you're too much. Too much like I forgive you for being stupid too much? I asked pleadingly. She sighed. I don't like it when you keep secrets from me. I winced, but she didn't notice as she continued. I already feel unbalanced in this relationship. You're just so powerful. I can't fight, I can't fly, I can't do kai magic. If you wanted to leave, there's nothing I could do to stop you. So when I find out you're hiding things from me, it makes me worried you don't trust me, that I'm not really important to you, that I can't hold you to me. I sighed and floated into her room. She stepped aside to let me. Bulma, I could never leave you. You think I have all the power here, but you have a hold on me like you wouldn't believe. Really? How? She asked. Your smile. Your laugh. Your brilliant mind. The way you play with your hair when you're thinking. The way you say my name when we're alone together. I smiled and leaned in to kiss her cheek. She allowed it, and that right there was all I needed to know the worst was behind us. Neither of us are perfect, Bulma. But we're perfect for each other. I'm the brawn and you're the brains. I'm the yang and you're the yin. I love you, and I'll never stop loving you. I'd said it before and meant it, but this was the first time I really put myself out there, got really vulnerable, and let her see all the emotion behind those 3 little words. She smiled, even with tears in her eyes. I love you too, Goku. Even when you're a real idiot. Huge idiot, I agreed. I promise not to keep something like this from you again. I took a deep breath and sighed. And that's why I need to tell you something. We sat down on her bed and I explained the truth. How I'd died and then been selected for something called replacement reincarnation. How I'd seen the life of the original Goku in my mind like a year-long movie and then woken up at the start with those memories intact. How I'd slipped into the shoes of Goku, taking over his life even though I wasn't really him. I talked and talked until there was nothing left to say. Bulma sat there, processing everything. Then she nodded. Okay. I blinked. Okay. That's all you're going to say? I asked the archive who my perfect match was. The answer wasn't Son Goku right away, it was Sol 4829A 1826 M0683Q0175G. You. Whoever you were, whoever originally inhabited the body I'm talking to, the answer was you. So yeah, I'm saying okay. Because it doesn't matter how you got here, just that you're here now, with me. Bulma, you're amazing. She smirked wryly. Well, I've been diving into the collective knowledge of the cosmos every day for months. I was bound to mature at least a little, get some perspective. I actually tried to look up love in the archive once. There was a lot of philosophy and a bunch of data on oxytocin and hormone balance, but no real answer. So if even a magical computer from a dragon can't define it, maybe I should just trust these feelings I have for you, even if I can't explain them. I hugged and kissed her, because what else could I do? Bulma, can we just hold each other tonight? I'm exhausted. That sounds real nice, she said. And so we cuddled, our nightly sex spree given a break, as we focused on and savored the connection behind it. Other than a cupcake and one hell of a wake-up blowjob, Bulma hummed happy birthday the whole time. My birthday passed without incident. My new family accepted and respected my wishes once they got over the shock of me hiding it from them. I got some training in, and when the lights went off I made up for the night we lost by giving Bulma all I could without breaking her. A month went by in a flash, with me training my ass off day in and day out, with the breaks of time with Bulma and my letter writing to stop me from killing myself or going insane. I managed to reach all the way to 100x Earth's gravity in the chamber, maxing out the machine. I could barely walk at that level, but I could still move, so I considered it training. Before I knew it, it was May 6, and Bulma was flying us in a private jet to Papaya Island. She didn't want me wasting any energy before my big day. We both knew that was crazy, that the contest was all but won, but I allowed the luxury. It was nice to be able to lay back and eat while being ferried from place to place. We went from the airfield to the arena where the World Martial Arts Tournament took place. I immediately noticed a key difference from my memories of the future past. Bulma, why did you buy the arena? The Capsule Corps logo was everywhere. Goku. Goku, my love. I didn't buy the arena. She grinned like a sated shark. I bought the organization. Okay. Why did you buy the whole tournament, then? Because I want to write a book. I blinked and scratched my head, trying to reason that out. Walk me through it, baby, walk me through it. Look, Kai is amazing. It can turn an ordinary human into a comic book hero, and I've looked into the archive at just how many miraculous things can be done when it's properly used. I want to write a book about it to get the secrets of unlocking it out in the open where anyone can find them. But to do that, I'll need data to back me up so it's not just crazy rambling pseudoscience. And I can't use the information from the archive because it's not peer-reviewed and it's top secret anyway. So, I need empirical data on Kai usage to substantiate my claims. Ergo, I need to record it being used. Thus, I bought the WMAT. That arena is going to have every instrument in the book and a few I invented just for the occasion aimed at it. Combined with film footage, I'll be able to prove that Kai exists and can be used to do extraordinary things. I connected the dots while she was talking. And by putting the Capsule Core logo on the event, you vastly increase the scope of advertising, increasing the odds that martial artists and other Kai-sensitive people would show up. And you'll be able to do the same thing with every tournament going forward, guaranteeing a steady stream of data. I won't even mention all the profits to be made from tickets and broadcasting. You know me so well, she purred. Make sure you put on a show for the cameras. For all we know, you'll be the only one here that can use it. Trust me, I won't be, I said. The Turtle Hermit School are here. Rashi must at least have taught them the Kamehameha wave like Grandpa taught me. I blinked and turned. Speak of the devil. Goku? Grandpa Gohan called, walking over to me through the crowd. Behind him lumbered the Ox King with Kai Kai perched on his broad shoulder. It's so good to see you. I embraced the man who'd raised me, taking comfort in his familiar scent. It's great to see you too. I didn't know you were coming. Well, I figured I could take a break from my hermitage to cheer you on. And wouldn't you know it, I ran into an old friend. I believe you've met the Ox King, Gohan said, waving at the giant of a man behind him. Yep. The castle doing okay, I didn't miss any fires did it? Not at all, young hero. We're still cleaning out all the soot, but the castle is as grand as when we left it. We still cannot thank you enough for what you did. The Ox King only had 2 volumes. Loud and louder. Hi Goku, chirped Kai Kai, blushing and hiding a bit behind her father's head. I smiled up at her, unaware of Bulma looking between us. Hi Kai Kai. You going to compete? No, just going to watch with Daddy and Uncle Gohan, she said, almost stuttering in her nervousness. I tried not to wince. Guess I hadn't managed to avoid her crushing on me. Then again, I had given her back her childhood home by making a tornado out of thin air. That was a pretty heroic thing for a 12-year-old to witness and be impressed by. Well, see you tomorrow. We'll just pop off to the hotel. We'll be cheering you on. Grandpa said. Aye, you guys. Thanks for coming. I said as the 3 walked off. So in another life, that little girl would have been the mother of your children, Bulma stated neutrally. I winced. Yeah. The real Goku promised to marry her, having no idea what marriage was. When she confronted him on it years later, he caved and agreed. He wasn't a good husband or father, truth be told. He was pretty much an absentee bum, just another kid for her to look after. Well, that won't be happening this time around, Bulma stated decisively. Far down the line when we start having kids, I'm sure you'll be a wonderful father. I blushed so red my cheeks burned. Be Bulma. What? It's true. Well, I'm sure you'll be an amazing mother. Naturally. There was no winning with her, and I kinda like that. Guess we were perfect for each other. I walked up to the registration table. The staff gave me a little trouble because of my age, but then Bulma stepped forward with her I sign your paycheck face and got things sorted out. I was put down on the rolls and ready to fight tomorrow. Ah, Goku. There you are. I thought we'd be seeing you here, said Rashi, coming up behind me. Both he and his 2 students were dressed in snazzy suits, while I was in my usual training uniform of a guy weighted undershirt, pants, armbands, and boots. Per Bulma's advice, I'd gone with shades more complementing to my skin tone, so my top was blue and my bottoms were cream. Nice to see you Master Rashi. Grandpa Gohan and the Ox King are here too, if you want to go meet them. Oh, really? I just might do that, have a little reunion with the old pupils. But right now, I got to get my current 2 into this here tournament. Yamcha struck a most muscular pose. I've gotten way stronger since the last time, kid. You won't be one-shotting me this time. Well, you do seem confident, and confidence is key, I said, trying not to tease, but unable to help myself. I was close to cracking 100k in power level, and he was barely over 100, from what I could sense. He couldn't hurt me if he tried. Sure, he was strong as 10 men and would probably get to the quarterfinals, but against me he had no hope. The kid just as short as me looked me up and down. He was bald beneath his fedora and had 6 incense burns on his forehead. So, you're the Goku I've heard so much about. And you must be Krillin. We shook hands, he trying to squeeze my grip. I didn't even tense, and he's the one who came away wincing. My muscles and tendons were like steel cables. Good luck tomorrow. I hope to see you in the top 8. Yeah, I'll definitely be there, he said, though he lacked confidence. He hadn't seen the effects of Rashi's training yet. Well, I won't keep you any longer. Go register. I grabbed Bulma's hand and walked away. Wait a minute, that pretty girl is with him. I heard Krillin gate behind us. Rashi wasn't able to answer, preoccupied as he was with a nosebleed. I didn't even want to know what filth was going through his head. The next day, I reported bright and early to the arena. As expected, we went through preliminaries to narrow us down to the top 2 of 4 brackets. The scientific equipment was hidden subtly around the room where it wouldn't get in the way, but it was there. As promised, I used mostly Kai techniques to deal with my opponents. I used very low-powered rays and balls to knock people out of the ring when I didn't just use a Kai to blow them away. I drew a lot of attention from the other contestants and staff, but I wasn't breaking any rules, so no one said anything. When I finished off the last guy in my half of the bracket, I surveyed the room. My focus was drawn to one person in particular, the highest power level there after me and Rashi, who looked ridiculous in his Jackie-chan getup, but that was neither here nor there. I'd expected a bit of a butterfly effect from taking out the Red Ribbon Army and been willing to accept the risks. Still, I hadn't anticipated the presence of Mercenary Tao at the tournament. In the end, the quarter-finalists were decided and we drew lots to decide the opening lineup. It was Krillin vs Nam, Jackie-chan vs Yamcha, Ranfin vs Tao, and me vs Jiren. We all stepped out into the main arena outside, where the announcer was waiting for us to sell us to the crowd. Ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages. Welcome to the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. Brought to you by Capsule Corps. Today, the strongest warriors and fighters from around the world will clash to decide who will be number 1. The winner will go down in our Hall of Fame as champion and receive 500,000 Zeni in prize money. Let's take a look at our combatants this year. Formerly of the Orin Temple, don't let his size fool you, give it up for Krillin. His bald head looked sunburned, his blush was so broad. From a far-off desert village, our dark horse of the day, Nam. The turbaned teen nodded politely but retained his deathly serious expression. A surprise entrant who proves that age is just a number, the amazing Jackie-chan. Rashi's eyes were locked on the professional cheerleaders Bulma had for some reason hired. The bandit of Diablo, a fighter more wolf than man, here's Yamcha. Pure shapeshifted into a banner in the crowd and waved to his long-haired friend. As beautiful as she is deadly, this rose has thorns, it's Ranfin. The seductress blew a kiss to the crowd. The most notorious assassin in the world, if you don't pay the price, then prepare to get iced, Mercenary Tao. Awkward applause, which the man paid no attention to. Raised in the shadow of Mount Paozu, master of mysterious and unusual tricks of combat, make some noise for Son Goku. I waved to the crowd, blowing a kiss in Bulma's direction, which she mimed catching. We really were a sappy couple. And finally, the Jira's here to cheer us, it's Jiren. The dragon-like fighter flexed his biceps and breathed fire, which I'm sure would be intimidating if I didn't know for a fact he was a 2-digit power level. Which one will be our champion? Let's find out, folks. Would Krillin and Nam please take positions while the other fighters go backstage? The 6 of us left, waiting for our turns to fight. So, which one do you think will win? Jackie asked me. I shrugged. Krillin is stronger, but lacks confidence. And Nam has a strong resolve. It's a coin toss depending on if Krillin goes all out before Nam strikes a decisive blow. I eyed him out of the corner of my eye. Isn't that Wigichi? Like you wouldn't believe. I almost decided to pull out when I saw you were entering. No need for me to humble my students by showing there's always a stronger fighter out there if you were here. But now I'm glad I did. If the drawing went differently, it might be Tao going up against them and that man would break them even with a ban on killing. The medics on standby have sage pills. No permanent injury here today unless, for some reason, they decide not to administer them. Rashi frowned. What are you planning? I'm not planning anything, except to give my opponents the match they deserve. Rashi eyed Tao and sighed. I see. Well, you reap what you sow. We stopped talking as the fight started. Krillin pulled off a few sloppy dodges and attacks, but Nam came at him with relentless force. Before a minute had passed by, the monk tripped and fell out of the arena. He hadn't been keeping track of his surroundings, a rookie mistake. Nam was declared the winner, and then Jackie-chan and Yamcha took their places. Yamcha put up a decent fight, even landing a few good hits with his improved Wolfang fist, but his master in disguise had him rush off the edge of the stage with a well-timed after-image technique. Ranfin and Tao's match was messy. Turns out her tactics didn't work on a sociopath. He ended the match by giving a brutal kick to her hip, which I'm pretty sure shattered her pelvis. He won by knockout, and Ranfin was carried away on a stretcher. My and Jiren's match went as expected. I opened the match with a baby Kamehameha and blew him into the wall separating the arena from the crowd. Well, there go the quarter-finals, everyone. Time for the semi-finals, where we separate the men from the boys. First match, Nam vs Jackie Chun. Rashi and Nam gave a very good showing, but the centuries of experience paid through. Nam was beaten after his cross-arm dive failed to connect. Rashi caught up with Nam after the fight, revealing that water in the city was free and offering a large storage capsule. I grinned at the nice gesture, wishing the young man well in life, before focusing on my own opponent, the infamous mercenary Tao. I'll offer you this one chance to surrender. Nothing will stand between me and that prize money. The brother of Shen had a nasty little grin on his face. I sighed and got into position, my index and middle finger held against my forehead. I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine. Begin. With a pop of displaced air, I appeared behind mercenary Tao. Moving surely and without hesitation, I gave him a chop to his neck around the height of his shoulder. Snap. Tao collapsed to the ground. I can't feel anything. I can't feel anything. He shouted. I looked away from the man I'd rendered a quadriplegic. You deserve death, but this should be even worse for you. You'll be totally helpless from now on, just like you made so many of your victims feel. Enjoy life in prison. The countdown finished, and I was declared the victor. The medics came to wheel a mercenary Tao off, conspicuously not using their provided sage pill or any other treatment other than careful handling. He's going to the prison ward, just so you know. Now that he can't walk, the courts are suddenly all ready to persecute, Bulma told me. As the owner, she of course had backstage access. Glad to hear it. And I was. One less villain in the world. Jackie-chan and I met on the arena floor, the sun setting in the distance. Should I even try? He asked me beneath his breath. I grinned and flared my aura to around 9000 PL, or roughly 30x the Demon King Piccolo. I forfeit. He called out, raising both hands like he was under arrest. I was declared the winner and spent all my winnings on a feast for me, Bulma, and the Turtle Hermit School and guests. With the Red Ribbon Army out of the way, I had 3 years of training and 3 wishes to look forward to. The world wouldn't know what hit it. I flew to Grandpa Gohan's hut on September 2nd. Goku? Hello, my boy. What brings you back here? Grandpa asked, coming out to greet me. I smiled, scratching the back of my head. I'm actually here for the power pole. Gohan blinked. Really? You always seem to prefer using your fists than weapons. Oh, I still do, for the most part. It's because I want to climb to the place above Korin Tower, if you know what I mean. Ah. Well, I can think of no one more worthy to see Kami's lookout. Hoping to get some training. I chuckled. More to ask him for a favor. Well, it's your business. Here you go. I took the red staff, tucking it into the duffel bag I carried that already contained some precious cargo. Thanks, Grandpa. See you later. With that, I flew off to Korin Tower. After greeting Bora and Yupa, I turned to regard the giant column. Well, let's make it a challenge this time, I muttered to myself. I reached to the white belt I wore, tapping the keys in the miniaturized machine. With a hum and a bit of exhaust heat around my waist, the capsule core gravity belt Mk1.7 turned on. After upgrading the original chamber to go up all the way to 500x Earth's gravity, Bulma had a billion zini idea. Gravity belts became the new fitness craze almost overnight. Just walking around town or doing chores around the house could turn into a workout. Gravity gyms with reinforced equipment would soon be available for the real serious athletes of the world. Most people considered 2x to be the maximum, and there were safeties built into the standard models to prevent from going over 5x. I, on the other hand, got my own unique version special. It could go up to 25x Earth's gravity, was portable, easily charged, and didn't even clash with my normal outfit. Of course, 25x Earth was barely felt by me anymore, since I'd adapted to 100x to the point I could do handstand push-ups and fingertip pull-ups. But that was when a handy technique I'd fished out of the archive came into play. Mass magnifier, I said, focusing my Kai in a specific way. With an invisible shift, my personal gravity shifted to 5x that of what should be normal. Combined with the belt, I was now operating under 125 Gs, which combined with my weighted clothing, made it so I was reduced to a functional strength I had surpassed when I was around 5. Shaking out my arms and neck, I eyed the climb ahead of me. Let's get to it. I tackled Korin Tower with all the savage ferocity and bullheaded stubbornness Saiyans were known for. I climbed and climbed and climbed, sweating buckets as I pushed my body to fight the pull of the planet I'd artificially enhanced. More than once I was tempted to stop to catch my breath or turn a zero and make it easier. But that would be quitting or cheating. Quitters never win, and winners never quit, cheaters never prosper. Bumper sticker sayings, but they were true. I was doing this to challenge myself, and by all the Kai I would win or die trying. The air getting thinner sure didn't help. But I kept at it, ascending mile after mile straight up. My muscles burned and cried, but they didn't tear, continuing to flex and extend at my insistent command. My mind remained focused, keeping the technique active despite all the distractions and outside pressures. This was a trial of the body and the mind. After hours, though it felt like days, I finally made it to the top of the tower. I flopped onto the floor on my back, sucking in oxygen like it was, well, oxygen. I lit up the mass magnifier, which immediately provided relief. I hit the off key on my belt, and suddenly I felt light as a feather. With shaky hands, I reached to the container around my neck. With the press of a button, a sage pill popped into my hand. I brought to my mouth and swallowed. Seconds later, I felt a rush of vitality and wellness urge through my body, banishing every ache and pain. It was like I'd just woken up from the world's best nap after eating a 10-course meal. I popped to my feet and closed my eyes to meditate for a second. A 12% increase. I might have to make this a daily thing, well, weekly. I'm not that much of a masochist. But seriously, this climb would definitely become a regular occurrence. I'd have to bug Bulma about upgrading the belt, which I'm sure was low on her priority list of inventions and tasks, and work on improving the mass magnifier technique. Still, you couldn't ignore the gains to be made. I'd just gone from 115 kpl to almost 129k. I wasn't the best at math, but if the increase remained consistent, I'm pretty sure I'd crack 1,000,000 in a little over a year. And that was ignoring my regular improvements from my voluntary self-torture sessions in the gravity chamber back home. I'd gotten around to looking up Saiyans in the archive. Along with some truly fascinating information about the history of my species and the exact details of my physiology, there had been clear-cut, defined explanations for my various transformations. The Azaru form was due to an enzyme secreted by a gland at the base of my tail that, for whatever reason, was released when Blutz waves hit my optic nerve. That's why losing a tail prevented the transformation from taking place. The Super Saiyan God thing was actually pretty basic. Either through the ritual or, as Vegeta had done, meditation and a familiarity with God Kai, I could trade out my mortal Kai for the divine counterpart. The efficiency of the conversion was dependent on a lot of factors, but I got the gist. If I ever truly mastered the God form at 100%, I'd cease to be mortal. A true apotheosis. But it was the section on the Super Saiyan transformation that was the real gold mine. Turns out, positivity and negativity are actual, tangible, measurable qualities in a person's Kai. When a Saiyan had a mostly positive aura and reached a minimum power requirement of 20 kili or 1 mpl, a new kind of cell was produced in their central nervous system. Termed S-cells by the archive, their only function seemed to be to supercharge Kai production and send the body into a hyper-excited physical state. There were two ways to activate them. A rush of negativity which stressed the S-cells, a pure heart ignited by rage as the original Goku would put it, or to channel Kai directly to the S-cells. This was what the Universe 6 Saiyans meant when they talked about a tingling in the spine. The number of S-cells determined how far the transformation went, with Super Saiyan 2 and 3, merely a question of activating dormant cells once you produced enough of them after the initial transformation. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of S-cells is that they were hard-coded into the Saiyan's genome. This meant that they could be directly inherited by any offspring. That's how Goten and Trunks were able to access the transformation so easily. They already had the S-cells necessary when they were born. It had just been a question of getting enough power to awaken them. Speaking of the next generation, I did wonder sometimes if they would ever come to be. I was with Bulma, not Kai, so Gohan and Goten were unlikely to ever be conceived, and Vegeta wasn't likely to steal my girl away from me. Even if Bulma and I ended up with those two, though, there was no guarantee of the exact same sperm meeting the exact same egg and developing the exact same way. There was every chance that the kids I'd seen in my visions before awakening in this body would never come to be. I got a little maudlin at the thought, but reminded myself that nothing was certain. I could die in my sleep from a disease or be hit in the head with a meteor tomorrow. Best not to worry about the future, beyond preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. If and when I had children, I'd love each and every one with all my heart and raise them to be good, strong, upstanding people. I shook my head. No time for wandering thoughts. I had a job to do. "Hi, Korin." "Bye, Korin," I said to the startled immortal cat as I raced through the tower. I made it to the top and placed the power pole in the slot. "Power pole extend," I ordered in a clear voice. With a glow, the magical stick began to lengthen. I rode it straight up through the clouds, going from halfway to outer space to just this side of it. When I was at the very edge of the atmosphere, a floating building came into sight. The end of the power pole I was gripping slid into a corresponding slot on the bottom of it, finally stopping in its growth. I shimmied my way up the side of Kami's lookout to the top and turned to look behind me. Woo. That is one hell of a view. You can see the curve of the planet from up here. I marveled. "What can Mr. Popo do to help you?" asked a voice behind me. I turned to see a squat black man with wide eyes looking at me, dressed up like a genie out of Arabian Nights. "Hello. I'm Son Goku. May I please speak to Kami? I need to ask him to do something about the Dragon Balls," I stated, patting the duffel bag I was still carrying. "To meet Kami, Mr. Son Goku must catch Mr. Popo." Outracing my own sonic boom, I held his hand a few hundredths of a second later. "Caught you." Mr. Popo blinked. "You are very fast." "Thank you." "Mr. Popo will ask Kami if he will see you." The small Jin walked into the grand temple near the back of the platform. When he re-emerged, he was trailed by an elderly Namekian wearing a blue cape and a white robe with a symbol for God on the front in red. "Greetings, Son Goku. I've been keeping an eye on you. Tell me, what brings you to my lookout this day?" he asked. I bowed, as was proper. This guy was the guardian of Earth after all. "Greetings, Kami. I come with a gift and a request." "What gift is this?" Kami asked, peering at me from his wrinkled green face. I fished into the duffel bag and pulled out what appeared to be an ordinary electric rice cooker. Kami's eyes widened. "King Piccolo's prison." "Yeah, I fished it out of the ocean. I figured it would be safer all the way up here with you to guard it. And when I finally take the time to learn some kind of evil purifying technique from the archive, you can merge with him and I can use it on your combined form. That way you'll be way stronger and still pure of heart." Kami leaned heavily on his walking stick. "I would rather never risk such a thing, but I can see the logic behind your reasoning. If ever there comes a time when I am absolutely sure of your success, I will allow it. Now, what is it you ask in return for returning to me my darker half?" I pulled a sheaf of papers out of the bag, leaving only the 7 Dragon Balls left inside. "Here's all the information the archive had on Dragon Balls, the dragon statue, and how the original Namekians made them. I want you to try and upgrade Shenron so that he can grant 3 wishes instead of just 1. Kami narrowed his eyes at me. "Is 1 a year not enough for you? You already plan to hoard them. Now you desire to have even more power with each summoning." I frowned back at him. "You know that I'm not going to be selfish. These wishes are going to help the world. Forgive me. I've grown a little jaded, seeing the pettiness of man over and over again." I didn't stop to think who I was talking to. Kami took the papers from me. "I'll do my best to grant your request. Wait here while I read these texts and see what I can apply." I spent the intervening time meditating, growing more and more comfortable with my Kai and how it flowed through me and everything around me. I was broken from my quiet reflection when I felt a pulse of energy from the Dragon Balls. I took them out, marveling at them. They'd each gone from the size of a grapefruit to the size of bowling balls, almost tearing the duffel at the seams. They were each a good 50 pounds by my estimation, which was as good as an ounce as far as I was concerned. I laid the 7 of them out and waited for Kami to return. "It is done, as I'm sure you can already tell. As a precaution, I have made an addition to the activation spell." The tall green slug-like humanoid explained. "They already spend most of their time in the most secure safe on Earth, but you can never be too careful." "What's the extra part?" Kami carefully sounded out a string of what to me were nonsense syllables, but I could tell were actually his native tongue of Namekian. "It means I am a friend. I hope this is not too much trouble." No, it was a good idea. I took a deep breath. Well, here goes nothing. Feeling grandiose, I raised my hands over my head. "Arise Shenron, and grant me a wish." The balls grew to a painfully bright luminescence, and as it had a year ago, the form of Shenron emerged from the light and twisted to face me. "You who have summoned me, I will grant you 3 wishes." It eyed me with its burning red eyes, waiting for my requests with an endless patience. I let out a breath. Bulma and I had thought long and hard about what to wish for. We'd come up with a ranked list, just in case Kami wouldn't be able to increase the wish count. I mentally prepared myself to change the world and spoke. "I wish that the Earth was protected from any and all extinction-level events." Shenron's eyes glowed. "Your wish is granted. There, now a gamma-ray or asteroid or rogue Kai ball wouldn't wipe out all life on the planet. I wish that the Kai signatures from this solar system were hidden from the rest of the universe. That way, my transformations wouldn't attract the eye of the PTO or Beerus ahead of schedule." "Your wish is granted." I licked my lips and went for the big one. "I wish that every person on Earth will have their basic needs for food and water met from now on." Shenron nodded. "Your wish is granted." The dragon dissolved into light while the Dragon Balls rose into the air. I braced myself and caught all 7 of them almost before they launched away. It pays to be the fastest person on the planet. I turned to Kami. "There. A shield, an invisibility cloak, and a breed biscuit for the planet. Trust me now?" The fellow alien smiled at me. "Indeed, I do." The next year dissolved into a blur of hard training, with brief commercial breaks of time with Bulma or my other friends. True to my vow, I climbed Korin Tower once a week, coming up with new and exciting ways to make it challenging. I raced multiforms, or had them throw attacks at me that I had to dodge, or tied rocks with their own gravity belts to my back and legs to make the weight even worse. And the rest of the time, I was in the gravity chamber. I sparred multiforms as well as robotic drones Bulma had invented for me. I had to restrain myself a great deal in order not to break them, but fighting them at their level allowed me to practice my technique and hone my abilities as a fighter. It wasn't enough to just be stronger and faster, I had to be better trained, have more body wisdom. Bulma managed to upload the drones with every martial art in the archive, so I got to fight a great mixture of styles and tactics. When I wasn't doing that, it was simple, brutal workouts at maximum tolerable gravity. I'd push myself until I could barely move or even breathe. And then it was time for a sage pill, and I picked up right back where I started. Bulma got so worried for my health, she set time limits into the chamber, so I could only be in it a maximum of 12 hours a day. It was just as well. I needed to rest, give my body time to catch up with its own progress, as well as work on my meditation and maintain my relationships. I still kept up date night with Bulma, I enjoyed family dinners with Panchi and Breeze, and I paid visits to the Turtle Hermit Gang and the Ox Kingdom. Speaking of, Krillin and Yamcha were still hard at work beneath Master Roshi's tutelage. With the help of gravity belts, the two managed to outpace Master Roshi's power level by a wide margin. The old master was incensed that his students actually managed to surpass him and took up training himself anew. Within a few months, he was back to a base form of his buff full-power self. I had fun hanging out with the three and giving them sparring practice. Krillin and I would never share the bond of spending months together like he and the original Goku had, but I considered us friends. Yamcha, in a bizarre twist, ended up dating Launch. She had desensitized him to his fear of women, and he somehow found both sides of her personality charming in their own ways. The two were very happy, from what I could tell. When I brought up Launch's condition with Bulma, she insisted on flying out and running some tests. She hadn't yet graduated high school, but she had all the practical knowledge and experience of a surgeon with multiple doctorates. Bulma wound up isolating the cause of Launch's split personality. Turns out she had a faulty corpus callosum, and a surge from her olfactory bulb was enough to switch which hemisphere was in control. Bulma came up with a cure within a week, and a newly green-haired Launch thanked her for giving her stability for the first time in her life. She easily settled into the mom role of the Turtle Hermit School, managing to be scary in a nice way, if that made sense. I wrote to Kai Kai, even showing up to visit once a month. We found a way of bonding by having me teach her martial arts. Her father was busy with running the kingdom now that his seat of office wasn't on fire, so he didn't have time to teach her anymore. I gently had her go through some kata and complimented her when she managed to land a hit on me with a PL of 10. I was her friend, but it was obvious that she wanted more. For the most part, I pretended to be dense to her advances and frequently brought up how I had a loving relationship with Bulma. Still, I knew that a confrontation was inevitable, but I was happy putting it off for as long as possible. As for my girl, she was on the way to becoming one of the most celebrated scientists in the world. With the raw data she got from the 21st WMAT, she pioneered the field of dynamology, or the study of miraculous power. She proved that Chi was a fifth fundamental force, comprised of massless particles she termed bulmachins. She took academia by storm, coming out with papers and theories that revolutionized the modern understanding of physics and biology. Combined with the advances in mathematics, engineering, and computing taken from the archive that Dr. Briefs happily let her take credit for, Bulma was set to go down in history. For my 15th birthday, I took the day off to spend it all with Bulma. We went to an amusement park, caught a movie, and generally were teenagers in love. I kept the public displays to a minimum, but I didn't let anyone think I was her kid brother either. Damn my lack of height. Why did I have to be such a late bloomer with my growth spurt? Was it a Saiyan thing or a Goku thing? Bulma, for the most part, didn't seem to notice the people who starred and pointed. We even managed to get Paparazzi, the capsule core heiress, out with the most recent World Martial Arts Tournament champion, apparently deemed newsworthy. When we got back to the Briefs mansion, I sensed a number of familiar Kai signatures inside. You didn't, I said with a resigned smile. I did, and you're going to like it, she countered without missing a beat. I walked into the dark interior and pretended to be surprised when the lights turned on and everyone jumped out. Everyone was here. Grandpa Gohan, the Ox King and Kai Kai, Rashi, Yamcha and Pure and Launch, Krillin, even Nam and Oolong. Would you invite the pig? I asked an hour later when he was shapeshifted into Bulma in a bunny costume and putting on a show for the single men. He was part of our adventure a couple years ago, I figured there was no harm in tracking him down. Totally regretting it now, though. Seems he and Rashi are hitting it off, though, my girlfriend said, watching with a twitching brow as her doppelganger did the can in fishnet stockings. Okay, knock it off, I said, walking over and bopping the transformed pig on the head. Spoil sport, Rashi grouched. I've lost a great deal of respect for you, Master Rashi, Grandpa Gohan spoke up, his hand still over his eyes to block out the sight. How did I end up training such a prude? I left the old men to their bickering. Panchi gave me a hug and wished me good night, leading a texting briefs out of the room. The Ox King had taken Kai Kai with him as soon as the show had started, and Launch had knocked Yamcha out when she caught him watching. Nam had passed out from a nosebleed, the poor sheltered thing. It was really just Krillin left, except he was pretending to be asleep after he saw what I did to Oolong. Pure was happily using his head as a perch. I looked over to Bulma, only to find she had moved to the staircase. She gave me a wink and walked away. I grinned and followed a minute behind her. Yay, birthday sex. I made it to our shared bedroom. Once her parents confronted us on it last year, we stopped hiding it and I moved into her room. It was the second biggest in the house after all. Since most of my clothes were conjured, I took up very little space and I learned how not to leave too much of a male presence in her sanctuary. I walked in to find her already under the covers. So, does the birthday boy have anything special in mind? She asked leadingly. I paused. Anything. I promised to at least think about it. I silently used multiform, creating 2 copies so there were 3 of me. Her smile widened. Oh, my. Here I was thinking I'd have to wait until my birthday to get a Goku gangbang. Great minds think alike, we said, as we shed our clothes and crawled onto the bed with her. My cock almost exploded when I reintegrated with them, sense memories of hours of pleasure and pounding hitting me as I reached my own peak for the dozenth time. Sensing she was at her limit, I called it a night. As we snuggled in the aftermath, Bulma ran her hands over his distended tummy. I'd pumped so much cum in her she'd swelled up a little. Goku, when do you want to start having kids? I was too blissed out to panic at the question. Besides, she didn't ask it leadingly, like it was a trap, more genuine curiosity. After we're married, I said simply. Okay. When are we going to get married? I figured we could wait until I was 18, so there wouldn't be any outcry about legality and such. I mean, I'm not sure I even have a birth certificate, but people should be less likely to say mean things about you if I'm a big boy when we tie the knot. She sighed. Fair enough. I pressed a kiss to the back of her neck. I promised to make it a surprise and romantic and worth the wait. She wiggled back so she was pressed even closer to me. I know you will. But that last thought, I fell asleep, unaware that Bulma was tinkering with an idea. The next day, I made my goodbyes to my birthday guests. I learned a few interesting things. Krillin had decided he'd learned all he could from Master Roshi and was going to go on walkabout to seek out new adventures and hone his skills. Yamcha would stick around, mostly because Launch had gotten comfy at the South Sea beach, even with Roshi as a roommate. Grandpa Gohan, having really reconnected with his old buddy, was moving away from Mount Paozu to the Ox Kingdom. He offered me the hut to do with as I would. I made hazy plans to build my own lodge for when Bulma and I wanted a quiet getaway. Nam returned to his village with enough water to make an artificial lake. Bulma had personalized his goodie bag, aware of his village's struggles. The mall scene off and breakfast in my belly that left me nothing to do but train and train and train some more. The days blurred together as I pushed myself. The earth itself might be protected, but someone could still show up and decide to exterminate all life the old-fashioned way. I had no idea how far the ripples of my decisions went. For all I knew, I had inadvertently brought the Saiyan invasion 10 years forward or hastened the revival of Majin Buu. Beings with the power to wipe out the whole universe existed, this I knew for a fact. If I wanted to protect my family, my planet, my Bulma from those threats, I needed to be ready. I had no illusions, I was still years, maybe even decades away from hitting my peak. But I'd climb that mountain as fast as I could. I started to notice something in July. My gains were diminishing. I'd push myself just as hard as I always had, but I got less and less progress for all the work I put in. Given that I was at 1.5 MPL, I took it as a sign that I was reaching the most I could get with just my base form. And so, I flew out to the Diablo Desert, which was utterly deserted, except for a few random bandits no one would miss if I got out of control. I meditated under the glare of the burning sun. I strove for and attained a state of utter and complete peace. Then, when I was as relaxed and free of tension as I could manage, I took my Kai and began to channel it into my spine. I felt a strange tingle in the region between my shoulder blades, so I focused the energy there. It got more and more intense until I isolated the exact spot the feeling was coming from. With a breath to prepare myself, I shoved the entirety of my body's power into that one spot, the cluster of S-cells I had managed to produce. It was like lighting a match soaked with gasoline. Or maybe a firework soaked in nitroglycerin. I'd never done cocaine or crystal meth, but I imagine what I was experiencing was similar to those highs. Every cell in my body had come alive, filling me with a feeling of unlimited energy and confidence. I could see and hear for miles, I could feel every brush of the wind on my skin, the sound of my own heartbeat was a drum in my ears. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could turn the desert around me to glass without even trying. I was a god, a titan, an unstoppable force. Nothing could possibly match this level of power. Nothing. Except there was. Several, actually. And I knew that. I fought through the distortion of the euphoria, trying to get my thoughts straight. I suddenly felt the strain of this new form. Every connection in my body felt tense as guitar strings, ready to snap and have me break apart into a million pieces. My heart was pumping a mile a minute and I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. The Super Saiyan form truly was a drug, addictive in its sense of freedom and power, but damaging to my body. I couldn't imagine ever mastering this, taming it, turning a roaring tiger into a placid kitten. I couldn't imagine shoving down the raging, rushing currents of my power to suppress myself down to the level of your average human. But I knew it was possible. I'd seen the original Goku and his son do it. It took a day in the hyperbolic time chamber, a full year of constant training to master this aspect of Saiyan power, but they'd done it. I withdrew my Kai from that spot in my spine, and it was like jumping from a hot tub to an ice bath. I was left shaking and panting, my body soaked with sweat, as I readjusted to a normal, stable body, instead of the demigod that was the Super Saiyan. I looked around and found I was in a bit of a crater, my blazing aura having pushed metric tons of sand away from where I was standing until I was left on the bedrock. I swiped my brow and focused. A year? I'll do it in 6 months. And then I went Super Saiyan again. My training shifted focus that day. I now spent every day mostly meditating, while simultaneously trying to maintain the Super Saiyan state. Not wanting to cause collateral damage, I often flew to remote corners of the planet, making sure to get back to West City by dinner time, lest I risk Bulma's wrath. When I was utterly spent from keeping the form up, I would grit my teeth and go back to training in my base form until I could hardly move, only to pop a sage pill and repeat the process. I started to get real gains in my training again, reaching 2M before the new year. I took a break from trying to pacify my blonde alter ego to make the wishes for 751 and Bulma's 18th birthday, but that went without saying. I had already used magic to end world hunger, famine was now a thing of the past. I used the wishes that year to deal with the other 3 horsemen of the apocalypse. I wished for an end to disease, that no conflict would ever escalate to murder, and that everyone would live as long as they wanted to. I didn't wish for everyone to be immortal, because I knew that some people truly reached a point where they had enough and needed the sweet release of death. I wasn't one of them, but I would respect the needs of others. I'd worded the wish so that everyone basically reverted to or stopped aging past 30 and would remain that way until such time as they were truly ready to move on. King Furry declared September 2nd the day of miracles. He made some not so subtle references in his speech that he was aware someone had the Dragon Balls and he wholeheartedly approved of whoever it was. I blushed at that, being complimented even tangentially by the ruler of the planet. Though it was really Bulma and Capsule Corp running things by this point, they'd grown into a superpower on the back of her and her father's upgrades of what came from the archive. True to my word, I was able to transition into Super Saiyan and not even blink by mid-January. I spent a full day just lounging around the house with golden hair and turquoise eyes. Panchi commented that she found my dye job and contacts very fetching. Briefs was more aware of the fact I wasn't exactly human but refrained from comment. And Bulma argued that I wasn't fully in control until I could do it in my sleep. So we spent a good few hours trying to tire me out before I went to sleep. Wouldn't you know, I actually woke up still Super Saiyan. The transformation officially mastered to my exacting standards, it was time to do something risky. I gave Bulma a kiss and promised I'd return within 48 hours. Then I used instant transmission to appear at Kami's lookout. Goku? What is it that brings you here today? Asked Kami, now looking identical to the Piccolo that had been good as an uncle to Son Gohan. With his reclaimed youth thanks to Shenron's magic, he had decided to take up training again. I occasionally challenged him to a spar, giving him a chance to cut his teeth on combat after centuries of peaceful watching. I looked him dead in the eye. I need to use the hyperbolic time chamber. Kami frowned. I won't even ask how you know about that, you have that magical computer from Shenron that reveals every secret of the universe. For what reason, though? Is there a threat I am unaware of? It's not so much because I need to get stronger. I just don't trust myself to practice this out here on Earth. What is this training that you fear so much? I blew out a breath. I want to try and combine the Azaru and the Super Saiyan transformations. Kami's eyes widened. I see. That might prove dangerous to those around you. Which is why I want to go to a pocket dimension with nobody but me. Kami nodded. Very well. I will grant your request. Remember, you can only spend up to 2 years in there in your entire lifetime, and there's only enough supplies in there to support a single person for that long anyway. I indicated the backpack I was carrying. I have hundreds of sage pills, I won't go hungry. Thanks for the reminder, though. With little fuss, I stepped through the door and into a place with its own distinct space and time. I laid my pack in the living area and walked out into the formless white void of the room. The temperature fluctuations didn't really bother me, my body able to handle the cold of space or the heat of a sun by this point. And the 10 gs were as unnoticeable to me as standard Earth gravity. I flew as far out as I could manage, the air growing denser the further I went. When it felt like I was at the bottom of a lake, I stopped. Hopefully the pressure would keep me from wandering further out if I lost control. I threw up a moonball. I didn't really need it, but I figured there was no point in making this even harder than it had to be when I was just starting out. I meditated myself into a zen state, to a point of total peace and balance. I looked up and allowed myself to transform into the Azeru. My clothes stretched with me, I was wearing Bulma's new nanofiber armor rather than conjured clothes these days. Then, when I was done turning into a 100-foot giant ape, I focused my Kai into the cells hidden in my spine. As it turns out, combining raw animal instinct with explosive Kai enhancement is like throwing fire and lightning into a blender. The destructive cocktail that came out proved quite difficult to control. It was a good month before I stopped blacking out each time I transformed and waking up somewhere else in the barren wasteland of the hyperbolic time chamber. I actually started to remember things, but the actual moment I lost control remained fleeting and beyond my grasp. After another few weeks, I finally managed to gain a few moments of lucidity at the start of the combination before I lost control. At the quarterway mark for my stay, I decided enough was enough. Alright, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm going to make this thing my bitch. You hear me? My bitch. Ironically, after my angry outburst, I spent a good hour trying to attain a state of purity. I found myself thinking about Bulma. I was doing this for her. So I could rise to every threat, protect her from all harm. If the Supreme Angel himself decided to mark her for death, I would have to be able to stop him. With calm deliberation, I attempted to access both transformations simultaneously. The writhing, roiling, chaotic mass of energy and emotion slammed into me with the force of a supernova. I met it resolutely. The unstoppable force would meet the immovable object. Every second was a struggle, but I refused to lose. The raging, roided-up beast would be caged in by my iron will and determination. Every second, the burning mass of plasma coiled around and within me, trying to burn or enflame me. I did not allow it. Zeno as my witness, I would stay in control. After a subjective eternity, the power began to abate in its ferocity. It was no less intense or wild, but it had bowed to me. Like a stallion breaking, its will to defy had broken. It still rocked and rattled in the confines I had set for it, but the form was stable. I opened my eyes, turned, and calmly walked all the long way back to the living area. Each step, I risked losing the thin edge of dominance I had claimed over this new form, but I persevered. At last, I made it to the copy of Kami's temple. I went to my backpack and pulled out a probe Bulma had designed. It flew around me, scanning everything from my blood pressure to my Kai frequency to the chemical makeup of my hair. When it was done and settled back into my hand, I sent the form down deep within, where it coiled along my spine like serpent awaiting its moment to strike. I was hit with a tidal wave of exhaustion. I managed to swallow a sage pill and I still passed out. When I awoke, I fiddled with the probe to get a hologram of what I looked like. I regarded the 3D model of my hybrid transformation and the data that went with it. My hair was still black and fell to my shoulders like a shaggy lion's mane. My muscles were bulging, and my skin was covered in pinkish red fur everywhere except my chest, hands, and feet. My eyes were a feral yellow with red pigmentation. I had also grown to about 5'9", or my full adult height. Interesting, I thought aloud as I scrolled through the information the probe had gathered. Power level off the charts, around 1 billion I'd say. So the multipliers combined to 500. That will certainly come in handy if I can manage to master it. Now, what to call you? You're stronger than Super Saiyan 3, so I almost want to say Super Saiyan 4. But that makes no sense. You're not a progression of the Super Saiyan form past 3, you're a mixture of a 0 and 1. I tapped my chin. Let's call you Super Saiyan Ape. I spent the next 9 months getting a handle of this new form and training in a capsule version of my gravity chamber. With the higher gravity of the hyperbolic time chamber, I was able to go up to 5000x Earth's gravity and even more if I used the mass magnifier technique. I wound up training in Super Saiyan 8 form as often as my base form and my progress was phenomenal. By the time the Hergleses told me I'd spent a full day on the outside within the chamber, I had more than doubled my power level all the way to 5M in my base form. I would now be more than twice as strong as Frieza in Super Saiyan form. And if I pushed myself further, explored all my possible transformations and breaking the ceilings on my base form, I just might beat him as I was. Which would be totally epic, let's be honest. I stepped out of the chamber a new man. Kami gaped at me. How I've never felt so much potential power in one person before. And you haven't even reached the limits of these new horizons. I grinned. Yeah, but I missed my girlfriend. I'll keep working on it. Don't worry. When will enough be enough, child? Kami asked. This thirst for power you have worries me, I must admit. I sighed and looked at him, sad to see distrust from someone I respected. I don't want to be the best. I just want to be my best. It just so happens that my best is a lot higher than most people would expect. I see. See you in September, or maybe earlier if you feel like sparring. Kami smiled wryly. If I ever feel like getting my ass handed to me, I'll be sure to contact you. I laughed. What do you know? The old slug could make a joke. I spent the next 15 months either working to be perfect Super Saiyan Ape or doing my ordinary training routine. I hit 500 Gs in my base form in the gravity chamber and started using mass magnifier as I had in the hyperbolic time chamber with lesser gravities to keep making gains. I gave Bulma the probe and she made a crucial discovery. The data wasn't in the archive. Turns out the computer didn't update itself as new information was created, simply having everything there had been at the moment it had been created. It was important to learn and led Bulma and Briefs to being more experimental with the schematics and science they gleaned, now knowing they weren't necessarily the absolute best possible. The wishes for 752 weren't as groundbreaking as the year previous, but they did a lot of good in their own way. The first wish for that every citizen of Earth would be free of depression or anxiety or other forms of mental illness. No more crazies or people locked in their own heads. Not quite perpetual happiness, but at least the worst darkness was locked away. The second wish was that the Earth would never run out of natural resources, everything quietly regenerating in the background. The third wish was a bit risky, but I had Shenron link the power of the Dragon Balls to me instead of Kami. Not that I didn't trust the old Namekian to take care of himself, but I had more confidence that I would survive. I was striving so much to be unkillable, after all. Plus, if they could do so much with his measly power, imagine what they could do with my millions. Bulma and I could start getting into even more outlandish wishes. My 17th birthday came around. Bulma went all out. She hired carnival rides, performers, no less than 10 different caterers, and flew everyone I loved in. Yamcha, Krillin and I had a lot of fun stuffing ourselves silly and riding the Astro Spinner zipper until we puked and then doing it all again. Rashi, Ox King, and Grandpa Gohan got drunk and started reminiscing and cracking jokes at an out-of-the-way table. I paused in my gluttony to check to see where Bulma was. I saw that she was sipping a drink and chatting with Kai Kai, whom had grown into a distractingly lovely young woman in launch. Curious, wondering what was so special about girl talk, I used the shape-shifting technique to turn into a bird and fly over near their table. I pecked at the ground and tried to stay far away enough that I wouldn't get kicked, yet close enough to hear everything. So, Launch, how are things with Yamcha? Bulma asked the former split personality. Pretty good. We're thinking about moving in together, Launch said, scratching a content pure in her lap. Don't you already live in the same house? Kai Kai asked. Yeah, but there's only so many times you can get cock-blocked or walked in on before you start cleaning your old Uzi. We're thinking of getting our own place. Bulma pulled out her smartphone to make a note. Look into invisibility cloaks and noise suppressors for public sex, she dictated. I proved that even a pigeon could blush. Sure, I was up for it, but I didn't realize girls were quite this explicit with each other. Kai Kai looked even more scandalized than I was. How can you say things like that? She demanded. Sorry, not sorry. I don't have a filter and I'm not looking to get one. I speak my mind and if you don't like it, tough. Bulma said imperiously. Well, you should still keep certain things to yourself. At least I'm not some repressed wallflower that can't even curse. Calm down, you two, Launch said with terrifying smile. Sorry, the heiress and princess said in unison. Anyway, back to the topic of boyfriends. How's Goku, Bulma? Launch asked. My girl got a dopey smile, which would have put one on my own face if it weren't for the fact I had a beak instead of lips at the moment. Just wonderful. He spends most of his time working out or practicing techniques, but she always drops everything when I ask. We go on a date every week and it's never boring. He listens to me and actually listens, you know, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. I wouldn't change a thing about him. Kai was looking down and trying very hard not to seem upset or jealous, but I saw it anyway. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Unrequited love sucked, but I didn't know how to fix it. Launch nodded and smiled before getting an alarming glint in her eyes. That's cute. But how is he? You know, in bed. Kai's head snapped up. Launch, how could you even suggest such a thing? He's underage. Bulma looked at Kai with something like pity. Actually, we had an existing relationship when we were both under 18. Romeo and Juliet laws allow for sexual intercourse without any statutory offenses. Kai's jaw dropped. So you and he. We've been in love for a long time, Bulma said simply. We don't have to talk about it, she offered. Blanche rolled her eyes. Come on, don't mind the prude. I want details. Technique, stamina, girth. Does he do anything with his tail? What's it like doing it with a guy shorter than you? Live a little, ladies. As a lady, I don't kiss and tell, Bulma said, before getting a grin. But a gal also doesn't have sex and shuts up. Let's just say I have no complaints. Oh, come on, give me something. Blanche demanded, even as Kai looked like she might cry. Bulma noticed the latter's emotional state but bowed to the former. Put it this way. I coo more times than he does. Oh, you lucky bitch. Kai got up and stormed off. Geez, she's uptight. Bulma sighed. Honestly, Blanche, are you blind? She's in love with Goku. Wait, what? Blanche gaped, even as Bulma got up and chased after Kai. I flapped after them, worried for both of them. Bulma reached Kai as she hid behind a big tree. Hey. I'm sorry, Blanche got a bit carried away, I shouldn't have played along, Bulma said. That's not why I'm upset, Kai said, keeping her head down. Then what is it? Maybe talking about it will help. I don't want to talk to you about this. Bulma shrugged. Okay, but I'm the only one here. And I'm pretty sure I already know what the problem is. Oh, you do you? Genius girl with the big boobs and the rich daddy knows everything that's wrong with sad little Kai. There was enough acid to dissolve bones in her words. Bulma remained unaffected. Just let it off your chest, Kai. Get it out in the open. Kai seemed to snap, looking up with red eyes at Bulma. Okay. I can tell you how much I like Goku. How I can't stop thinking about him. That I haven't stopped thinking about him since the moment we met. That I'm so fantastically over the top, want to slit my own throat in love with him, that for every minute of every hour of every day, I can't believe my own damn bad luck that you met him first. I looked down from the branch I was perched on, my heart breaking. Damn it, I should have nipped this in the bud. I should have talked to her, been more direct. I should have. Good. You said it. Now we can talk about sharing him. Wait, what? Kai asked even as I thought it. Bulma had a calm, patient smile. You know he's not human. Yes. He told me. I don't care, he's still the best man I know. Me too. And I love him. I love him so much. But he's the last of a dying race. Bulma leaned against a tree, looking into the distance. I brought this up with him a long time ago, the day after we met in fact. He's not okay with cloning, and he feels very strongly that the only ones raising his kids are him and their mother, so artificial insemination is out the window. Bulma shrugged. Then we made the wishes for everyone to be mostly immortal, and it stopped seeming like such an issue. We'd be together for centuries, we could pop out a reasonable number of little half-Saiyans in that time. Bulma sighed. And then I realized something. What? Kai asked. I'm not enough for him. I almost shapeshifted back then and there to deny her, but she kept talking before I could make the decision. He loves you in his own way. I'm not sure he even realizes it, but I recognize the light in his eyes when he talks about you. It's the same he gets when he talks to me. And it occurred to me that I was being selfish. Selfish? Kai asked, voicing my own confused thoughts. Bulma chuckled. You know how we got together in the first place. I asked the archive who my perfect boyfriend would be, and he came up. When I realized that he still loved me and somehow loved you at the same time, I got to thinking. I asked the archive this question. Who would be perfect for Son Goku in a relationship? Bulma looked at Kai with an amused smirk. The list was as long as your arm. He's just that much of a loving, caring, open-hearted person. He could settle down with me, or you, or any of a dozen others and be happy. So that led to a few days of research into polyamory and group relationship dynamics. And finally, I decided that I loved him enough to not ask him to settle for just me when he has more love than any one person could handle. So what are you saying? You want me to Kai sputtered. I'm not saying that we have to be lesbian life partners and have orgies with him and the rest of his harem. Just that we be sister wives and keep the relationship open for others to potentially join. I think of it like he's a sun, just so massive and full of energy and life, and I'm a planet orbiting him. Well, there's plenty of room for other planets. He can be in 2 or more places at once with his multiform, so none of us would necessarily be neglected or denied one-on-one attention. And I know that he has a bigger appetite for sex than I can satisfy, so more partners wouldn't be a strain in that department. This is insane. Kai said weakly. Bulma patted her on the shoulder. Just picture it. He comes home from a long day of training. You have dinner cooked and ready on the table. We live in a house I pay for so you guys don't have to worry about work or expenses. A few munchkins running around in the yard, a bassinet in the corner, maybe a few pets. We go to sleep in a big puppy pile on the bed. It's nice, right? It is a nice picture, Kai admitted. It's just not one I ever saw for myself. Bulma shrugged. It's up to you, Kai. But if you love him as much as you say you do, then you should take this opportunity. Because I'm never letting him go. I'll die before I stop loving him, and I'd bet my life he'll die before he stops loving me. We will be together for the rest of our lives. I'm giving you the chance to join us. I understand wanting him all to yourself, believe me I do. But it's not fair to him. If I were you, I'd take him any way I could get him. I'll have to think about it. I'll let you know. Kai got a determined look. But not a word of this to him. I don't want him to start acting differently around me. Mum's the word. I haven't even talked to him about any of this. I should probably have done that before bringing it up with you, but then you ran off and I just had to talk to you. Bulma turned to look towards the party. Where is he, anyway? I flew off into the thick of the carnival setup, shape-shifting back into my real body between two tents. I walked from there towards Grandpa Gohan and the other two dads at the party, my mind miles away. Bulma found me with them, nodding along as they traded drunken anecdotes and jokes. Hey, babe. I was looking for you. Hi, Bulma, I said, putting on a smile. She knew me too well. What is it? I think I need to lie down. Oh. Did you finally manage to eat too much? I don't think that's it. Well, you can't be sick. That doesn't happen anymore. I stood up. I just need some time to think. I'll come back when I got my head on straight. Goku, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I just need to process something. I kissed her cheek. Love you, I told her, and meaning it with all my heart. Love you too, she replied, her brow furrowed in concern. Don't worry, it's your party, no one will care if you go missing to take a nap or something. Just promise to come back when you're feeling better. I will. With that, I used instant transmission to go to our room. I laid down on the bed and stared at the ceiling, the unbelievable conversation I'd heard swirling around in my head. I'm not in love with Kai, I stated. For some reason, it felt like a lie. Okay, I like Kai as much as the next girl. Still wrong. I love her as a friend. Getting closer. I have loving feelings for Kai, but I'm not in love with her. A few naughty fantasies I would never admit to popped into my head. Alright, I have sexual feelings for Kai, but I love her, so it's okay. I laid there in shock. Well, fuck. Bulma was right. Damn it, she's always right. I managed to get myself back into a functional state of mind in time to enjoy the rest of the party, including a 7-tiered Saiyan-sized birthday cake. I decided to act as though I'd heard nothing. If and when Kai got back to Bulma with an answer, then they could approach me when they felt the time was right. Until then, I would continue on in faked ignorant bliss. A month passed by in a flash, and then Bulma and I were flying back to Papaya Island. The power levels of the contestants were much more impressive this time. Most were in the triple digits, and I sensed at least 5 that cracked 1,000. Maybe this wouldn't be as boring as I thought. I got much less grief from the registration table, even though I was almost the same size I'd been when I'd last shown up. If I didn't stop being a midget by my 20th birthday, I was going to scream. Hey Goku. Great party. Yamcha called out, coming up behind me much as he had 3 years ago. Thanks. So you and Launch find a place yet? Yup. Bulma actually hooked us up. She's subletting an apartment for us and giving us a discounted rent. It's nice to have friends in high places I guess. Hey, said a random passerby, eyeing the black-haired, full-framed Rashi up and down. Well, hello pretty lady, the old lech replied right back. Krillin sighed, the weight of his suffering such that his ghost almost flew out of his mouth. He's been like this since we landed. Turns out he's even worse when girls actually flirt back. I can't take much more of this. Well. Look what the cat dragged in. Rashi froze, his smile dying as he started to look downright hostile. He turned to look at the 3 that had approached us. Shen, he grit out. What are you doing here? I looked between the 2 sides. It was like a carnival mirror. 2 masters, 2 alpha males, 2 dwarfs. One side was orange and blue, the other was green and yellow. Yamcha and Krillin looked with confusion at the sneers they were getting from these strangers. When I heard that you'd crawled out from under your rock to train some students and have them compete at the last tournament, I decided that the Crane Hermit School should have its time to shine. The purple-haired man gave an ugly smile. Heed my words. One of my boys will be the champion this year. Rashi guffawed. Ha. You've forgotten more of our master's teachings than I ever thought possible if you believe that. Rashi hooked a thumb to point to me. We're all just competing for second. Furious, I raised my power level to 10k, giving no outward signal of my surging aura. Shen didn't so much as blink, proving he was blind to Kai, but his students suddenly looked nervous. Ha! You don't know what you're talking about, Rashi. Tian Shinhin and Chiaotzu have endured some of the most brutal training in the world. They'll make mincemeat of the former champion. Shen looked at me with bored, unimpressed eyes. Roku, was it? Goku, I said calmly. No point getting angry. That would be like drinking poison and expecting it to kill him. The Triclope stepped towards me. You crippled mercenary Tao. It was much an accusation as a statement. I looked back undaunted. He was a bad man who did bad things. He crippled a lot of other people or even worse. I don't regret what I did. Mercenary Tao is a great man. Perhaps, I said. But I was greater. And if might indeed makes right, as your master taught you, then you shouldn't have a problem with what I did. Tien grit his teeth. See you in the finals. We'll see, I said neutrally. The Crane School walked away, apparently already registered or just shooting themselves in the foot to be dramatic. Either or. Who was that guy, Master Rashi? Seems like he's got a real beef with you, Yamcha asked. Shen and I were students of the great Mutato. There was a time when I considered him a brother. But he grew selfish and arrogant and began using our master's teachings for dark purposes. He taught his brother how to kill, and that man went on to become mercenary Tao. So, Goku sent that guy's pseudo-uncle to prison in a wheelchair. Krillin whistled. He must have a real grudge against you, man. I had a secretive smile on my face. Yeah, well, I have a feeling that by the time the tournament is over, he's going to feel differently. This WMAT would see the test run of the corruption correction. I'd finally got around to digging into the archive for a technique to cleanse evil from the soul. I went through a few potential candidates before finally striking gold. An order of monks on the planet Trifid had seen evil and immorality as a disease of the spirit, a cancer of the soul. They'd eventually developed a cure that roughly translated as corruption correction. The technique had two parts. The first required 5 seconds of eye contact, where a beam was shot from my eyes into the targets. They would then vomit up a sort of negativity tumor, the accumulation of all the darkness in their heart. It was then up to me to destroy the tumor before it got loose and wreaked havoc. The result would leave the recipient with a pure heart. It wouldn't fundamentally change their personality, and they could dirty themselves up with cruelty and malice all over again if they wanted to, but for a moment they would be restored to goodness. I had plans to test it out on the Crane School before using it on King Piccolo. If it worked, then I was set to redeem all the villains that came after me in the future. I hopefully wouldn't have to kill my fellow Saiyans, I could make Frieza a force for good, and I could make sure Bu remained a soft cotton candy marshmallow. The next day, we all reported for the elimination rounds. Rashi entered as himself this time and quickly fought to the top of his bracket. With a gravity belt set to 150x and using the mass magnifier, as well as making a 90-10 split multiform to hang out with Bulma, I actually got a decent workout fighting the mass of hopeful fighters. The drawing for the quarterfinals was rigged, Chiaotzu using telekinesis to make sure we all drew the number Tien wanted us to. I kept my mouth shut and focused on the feel and shape of the technique, hoping to replicate it at a later date. It came down to Tien Shinhin vs Yamcha, Rashi vs Man-Wolf, Krillin vs Chiaotzu, and Pampet vs me. Tien won his match with a cheap shot, aiming a Doden Ray at the crowd and forcing Yamcha to take it. Rashi sent Man-Wolf away with his tail between his legs. Krillin got tripped up by Chiaotzu using telekinetic paralysis, allowing the mime to physically push Krillin out of the ring. Pampet was one of the guys with a PL over 1k, and I genuinely enjoyed our fight, but I finally won by grabbing his neck with my tail as I jumped over him and flipped, throwing him out into the crowd. The announcer hyped the crowd up, leading into the semi-finals. Rashi managed to plant a seed of doubt in Tien's mind, watering it by forfeiting the match to prove he wasn't just trying to get in the Triclope's head. I threw off Chiaotzu's Kai and rushed in, sending the surge of Kai energy into his body through his optic nerve. He fell to his knees, coughing up a jet black blob that formed into a copy of Chiaotzu, with blank wide eyes and a cruel grin. I atomized it with a Kai bomb that swerved into the sky, blowing up like a firework. The Crane School student rushed into my arms crying, begging forgiveness for all his sins. I comforted him, even as Tien watched from the sidelines in shock. "What did you do to my friend?" he demanded in rage as our finals match started. "It's like he's been brainwashed. You know when you clean a dryer's lint trap and end up with a big dust bunny?" I asked, dodging his blows almost casually. "Well, that thing I destroyed was the dust bunny, and the lint was every bad thought and negative emotion he's ever had. He's still your friend, he just has his conscience back." "Who are you to do that? What gives you the right?" Tien yelled. "It felt like the right thing to do. I don't regret it. And I'm going to do the same to you." I leaped at his head, grabbing his skull. He closed his eyes, but forgot about his third eye. His corruption and I had a clash of the Tri-Beam and the Kamehameha in a suitably dramatic face-off. Shen lost 2 students, his reformed proteges deciding to study under Master Rashi. As I turned away from the crane hermit losing his shit, I was approached by my multiform and Bulma. To my surprise, Kai Kai was also with them. Hey Kai Kai. I didn't know you were coming. She poked her fingers together. Neither did I. Then I made a decision, and here I am. Merge with your multiform, Goku, Bulma instructed. Tilting my head, I reached out with my Kai and drew the construct back into my body. A rush of memories hit me. I gaped. Are you serious? Bulma grinned and wrapped an arm around Kai Kai's shoulder. Tell him, girlfriend. Kai Kai gulped. Goku, Bulma and I, will you date both of us? She shouted, seeming to find her nerve at the last second. I looked between them. Then I smiled and flew up. I kissed first Bulma and then Kai Kai on the cheek. Sure. Let's give this a try, see if it works. Steam came out of Kai Kai's ears and Bulma grinned like the cat that got the cream. And that's how I wound up dating 2 women at once. I touched down atop Kami's lookout, the Dragon Balls tucked into a lead-lined case. I was immediately barreled into by a small form. Goku. Goku. Look how big I got. I smiled down at the young, smiling Namekian. Wow. You've really grown. What you been up to? I do my lessons with Lord Kami and then I play tag with Mr. Popo. Yesterday, I actually managed to touch him. I grinned and rubbed that antennaed head. Good job. Keep up the good work and I'll get you a gravity belt for your birthday. Really? The day after the World Martial Arts Tournament, I had come up here to use the corruption correction on Kami's darker half. We released him from the rice cooker and I used the technique on him before Shenron's magic could even revitalize him. Given he was nothing but a mass of negativity, the corruption correction left him comatose, an empty shell after I blasted the black mass into oblivion. Kami merged with it and his power level skyrocketed. He truly was a super Namekian, he had no idea how much harm he was doing by ripping himself in half the way he had. We'd enjoyed a spar, which of course I won, and Kami he decided to keep that name, asked if I would take up his mantle as Guardian of Earth. I was already custodian of the Dragon Balls, which was half the job. I declined, not wanting to spend my days as a glorified sentry, but suggested that he make a son to one day take his place. He'd spat out an egg and little Piccolo Jr. had been born. I was pretty much a beloved uncle and I did my best to be a doting family member. I brought toys, checked in with him as regularly as I did the rest of my extended family, and occasionally played with him on my day off. The kid was strong considering he was barely 4 months old and was set to become a real powerhouse once he reached maturity. I was looking forward to having another reliable sparring partner. Ah, Goku. Here for the annual wishes, I take it? Kami asked, coming up behind his son. Yeah. These last 3 should get us pretty close to utopia. Anything else going forward will just be extra stuff we think of that fills in a gap here or there. It helps that Bulma is already working her own magic with technology and capsule core to do some of the stuff we were going to wish for, I explained, pretending not to notice Piccolo chazzing my tail. Well, do what you will. I took out the Dragon Balls and summoned Shenron. Piccolo oohed and awed at the dragon's appearance. You who have summoned me, I will grant you 3 wishes again. Huh. What do you know? Even mystical wish-granting serpents have senses of humor. I wish for all the pollution in the biosphere to be magically vanished, for everyone to have the chance to get an education, and for a stable climate. Your wishes have been granted. I made a game of it and gave the Dragon Balls a 5-second head start. I still caught all of them before they touched the ground. Kami regarded me with questioning eyes as I packed away the stone orbs. I noticed that you haven't wished for an end to crime. Why is that? Because that would infringe on free will. I stood up. Look, I'm okay with subtly brainwashing everyone into not killing each other. But not hurting each other seems just a step too far. Even the corruption correction doesn't take away the capacity for evil. A person could turn right back into a black-hearted scumbag if they really wanted to. I'm not a god, and I don't even agree that they should have the right to dictate our actions. If people still want to steal and fight and poison themselves even with all the opportunities these wishes and Bulma's work with the government give them to live wholesome lives, that's up to them. And they have the right to choose. Kami smiled. There is a wisdom to you I do not appreciate. So, already know what you'll wish for next year? Actually, yeah. Bulma thinks we should terraform the moon, Mars, and Venus. There's been a real population boom now that only a handful of people are dying each year and everyone is eternally young. We could sure use the extra space down the line. I suddenly moved 2 feet to the right, letting a pouncing Piccolo fall flat on his face. Too slow, kid. Piccolo pouted. I'm going to grow up and get real strong. And then I'll fight you for real. I grinned and acknowledged his vow as a warrior. I'm looking forward to it, Piccolo. I was relaxing on my day off, just flipping through the channels. To my delight, I could lay my feet on the table. I'd finally hit my growth spurt in the weeks leading up to my 18th birthday, though I was technically turning 19 due to my time in the hyperbolic time chamber. I was just thinking about getting something to eat when there was a knock on the door. "I'll get it," I called, going to the door. I opened it and had to blink. Fortunately Baba. I could be forgiven for my confusion. The woman before me bore little resemblance to the hunched crone from my memories. She stood 5, her black robe clinging to jaw-dropping curves. Her face had the clear, cute lines of a cheerleader, and her black hat was perched atop pink tresses that fell like a waterfall of sakura petals. She looked like she had been lifted off the pages of a witch girl manga. She noticed me checking her out and winked. "I understand that I have you to thank for my reclaimed youth." I scratched the back of my head. Bulma came up with it. I just said the words. "Well, in any case, you have my thanks. But that's not why I'm here." "Alright. What is it, then?" She cleared her throat. "King Kai, Lord Sovereign of the North Galaxy, Keeper of Souls and Master of the Ancient Ways, cordially invites you to lunch." I blinked. Huh. Guess even with the Kai barrier, I'd caught his attention. Then again, an awful lot of magic was used on the planet every year, which was a different energy entirely. "I see. Can you give me a lift to Otherworld?" Baba slumped. I was expecting more of a reaction. Kids today, so desensitized by movies and television. A blue glass orb floating out from her robe. "Place your hand on this." There was a weird pulling sensation that was nothing like instant transmission. I blinked and I found myself to the side of King Yama and his giant desk. I looked at the line of soul clouds leading up to him and felt a shiver. Never again, in any way, shape or form. I didn't even eat fast food because there was a line. Live once. What are you doing here?" questioned the massive red ogre. Baba shrugged. "For some reason, the King Kai wants to talk to this hunk." She turned to me, holding up a finger. "Now remember, this time was as a favor to the Kai. You want another trip to the land of the dead, it's a billion zeni, cash up front." "Got it," I said, hiding a sweat drop at her legendary greet. King Yama summoned an ogre assistant who led me to the start of Snake Way. King Kai's planet is at the end of this road. I'm afraid the journey takes several months and your appointment with King Kai is for noon. "If I were you, I'd book it," said the helpful Oni. I grinned and powered up to my maximum. Paying no heed to the gaping assistant, I shot off at my fastest speed. I never got the chance to really cut loose and fly. I soared over the winding path of Snake Way, traveling at thousands of miles per hour. Within 10 minutes, I made it to the end. I banked upward and flipped, coming down to land on the tiny sphere of the North Kai's planet. "Hello? Anyone here?" I was invited for lunch. I shouted. A strange blue creature wearing black robes, a cap and sunglasses came out of a small dome-shaped house. He had pointed ears and cricket-like antennae. "Oh, Son Goku. You arrived sooner than I expected." I nodded and, remembering my manners, bowed. "Hello King Kai. Sorry if I'm too early." No, it gives me a chance to give you a test while lunch finishes cooking." The Kai walked around me, surveying me from head to toe, nodding and mumbling to himself. He stopped before me. "Well, I have nothing to teach you in the physical realm. You've done quite well for yourself in that department. However, if you want to learn from the many legendary techniques I have mastered, you must do one thing. Make me laugh." I scratched my head. Actually, the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb are in the archive, this computer I wished for with the Dragon Balls. I just haven't practiced them out of respect to you. The core person stumbled before catching himself. "Yes, well, if you wish to earn the right to perform them without suffering divine retribution, you will pass my test regardless." I searched my mind for a good joke. For some reason, I could only think of ones Rashi told me. Well, here's hoping the Kai was a bit of a pervert. "Okay. What's the difference between a breeze and a nun?" "I don't know, what?" "A breeze will blow you." Dead silence. Ha. 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 King Kai went, clutching his stomach. "Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to be telling that one to the other case." "Well, not the East Kai, she's a woman and would get offended. But nice one, kid." I blew out a breath. I can't believe that worked. Well, just goes to show. With the exception of my grandpa, all old men were perverts. We settled down and had a nice lunch. Turns out King Kai had been eavesdropping when I had explained my vision of the future to Bulma. The reason it had taken so long for this meeting to happen was because the King Kai had to find space in his busy schedule. For the most part, the King Kai approved of my actions with the Dragon Balls and encouraged me to keep on getting stronger. It would be a real feather in his cap to have the strongest warrior alive in his quadrant. I got some stern warnings to never intentionally draw the attention of Majin Buu or Beerus, but was otherwise given free rein. The fact that I outpowered the Kai even in base form probably was a factor, but neither of us mentioned it. I took a chance when lunch was coming to a close. "King Kai, may I hold your hand?" A divine being tilted his head. Okay. With a grin, I took his offered hand and sank into the lotus position. I closed my eyes and focused, using all the practice I had put into mind reading to help my Kai sensitivity to good use. I looked only at the space where King Kai should be, on the body I was holding, on the skin I was touching. I sensed it wasn't nothing. It was more an absence. Like when you look up at the sky on the new moon and can't see the moon exactly, but you can make out the empty space where it should be. That's what it was like trying to sense King Kai. There was something there, I just wasn't able to see it. I strove harder, looking further, deeper, from different directions. Almost. There. I shouted. Huh. So that's what it feels like. What? What feels like what? King Kai demanded, taking back his hand. Godly Kai. Thanks King Kai. Now I don't have to wait around for the ritual to become Super Saiyan God. Thanks for lunch. I'll come visit every now and then. As I reached up to engage instant transmission, I heard his last words. I feel so used. It wasn't that different dating Kai Kai and Bulma compared to dating just Bulma. I spent my mornings with Kai Kai and my evenings with Bulma, and on my day off I used multiform to take each of them on their own individual date. It took a little while to master keeping the technique up at such distances, but training was training. It probably helped that Kai Kai wanted to save herself for her wedding night, so I didn't have to juggle keeping both of them physically satisfied. I was very much in love with both of them. They made me happy in different ways. Kai Kai was so gentle and caring, with a backbone that came up whenever those she loved were threatened. Time with her was soothing. A walk through the garden with her had me smiling for the rest of the day. A gentle spar with her reminded me why I fought and inspired me to do better. Plus her cooking was to die for. She was my safe place, a calm retreat that healed my soul. Bulma, on the other hand, never let me have a dull moment. She was constantly challenging me, changing how I saw the world, making me think and constantly on my toes. She got my blood flowing in all the right ways. She was also much more sensual than Kai Kai. Once she insisted we go to a nightclub while she was in a skimpy dress, and I got so worked up at guys ogling her that we had the hottest sex of our relationship afterwards. They were two extremes, chaste and sinful, peaceful day and exhilarating night. Since the way to my heart was my stomach, I'll use a food metaphor. Kai Kai was a nice full glass of chilled apple juice, refreshing and light. Bulma was chocolate cake, rich and bitter with just a touch of sweetness. I couldn't get enough of either of them. The two of them were cordial, swiftly warming up to genuine friendship. Bulma called Kai Kai every day, trying to find common ground besides me. They bonded well enough and on occasion even went out together on outings in either West City or the Ox Kingdom, just the two of them. As Bulma had said, they'd never be lesbian life partners, but they could spend time together and enjoy it. I'm sure our household would be a happy one. On my 18th birthday, we went on our first group date. I flew both of them to a hot spring tucked away in the mountains. We spent hours just enjoying the water, talking, and getting used to being naked together. Well, Kai Kai got used to being naked. Bulma and I were already intimately familiar on that front. Afterwards, when the sun was setting, I flew both of them to the summit of Mount Paozu, one in my arms and the other safe on my back. Bulma rubbed herself against me while Kai Kai clung to my head, unintentionally shoving her breasts into my face. I landed with a raging heart-on that I fought to suppress. This is where we had our first date, Bulma said fondly. Yes, it is. I said. If you look carefully, you can see Grandpa Gohan's old hut from up here. Oh, I see it. Kai Kai said, coming near the edge of the cliff without fear, pointing at the right clearing. Wow, what's that right next to it? I've been sending multiforms to build us a house. I'm not saying we have to live all the way out here, but it would be nice to have a place to retreat to, away from the city. Great idea, Goku. Bulma grinned, eyes alight with anticipation. So, why are we up here? I figured I should do this here, where we can look on where our private getaway will be. I got down on one knee. Kai Kai's hand flew to her mouth, while Bulma actually started to tear up. Bulma, you are the light of my life. You're the most gorgeous, smart, sexy woman I've ever met. Kai Kai, you make me happier than I ever thought I could be. And if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make you feel the same way. I pulled out 2 velvet jewelry boxes. With a flick of my fingers, I opened them both. Bulma's had a small diamond rose, in memory of the one I'd given her after our first fight. Kai Kai's was a princess-cut diamond surrounded by sapphires, her favorite gem. Both were set in 24-karat gold bands. I love you both. Will you marry me? Of course, you idiot, Bulma said, wiping at her eyes and sniffing. Yes. Kai Kai had a smile on her face that outshined the sun setting behind her. I put Bulma's on first, in recognition that we'd been together longer. Then I put Kai Kai's on her finger. They both hugged me, tucking their heads into opposite shoulders. I kissed both of them on the hair. My tail wagged happily behind me. The three of us were engaged. Bulma got a tad frisky, reaching a hand to rub the base of my tail the way she knew I liked. I sent her off with a multiform that headed her back to the Briefs mansion. I flew Kai Kai along the scenic route back to her castle. Goku, it's beautiful. Where did you find it? Kai Kai gushed, unable to take her eyes off her ring. I made it, actually. Really? Where did you get the stones? I chuckled. No, Kai Kai. I made it with my matter creation technique. Gems and all. Kai Kai blinked. You can make gold and diamonds out of thin air? Yeah. But I don't really use it much. Bulma's already rich enough for all of us to share, and it would feel like cheating to sell the stuff I created. Kai Kai grinned and snuggled in. Always so noble. It's kind of my thing, I joked. We touched down, and Kai Kai dragged me to her dad's office. Daddy. Daddy. Goku proposed. Congratulations. My future father-in-law bellowed, loud enough to be heard by the town at the base of the mountain the castle was on. I endured a backslap from the giant of a man, which oddly enough managed to hurt. Must be the power of family. So, when is the wedding? Kai Kai and I exchanged amused looks. We'll have to ask Bulma. If I know her, and I think I do, she's going to want to plan the wedding of the century, I answered. It'll take at least a year, maybe even 2. We'll probably end up fighting over styles and themes and colors and everything, Kai Kai said. But it'll be worth it. So worth it. After a few more questions from the Ox King, I escorted Kai Kai to her royal bedchamber. I leaned in for our usual quick peck, but she surprised me and wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing herself up against my body. I responded with enthusiasm, wrapping my arms and my tail around her waist, carrying her over to her bed and laying her down, following her with my lips attached to hers the whole time. We made out for a few minutes until the need for oxygen finally got the better of us. Kai Kai, what brought this on? I asked. My one true love asked me to be his wife, that's what, she said breathlessly, leaning up to nibble on my neck. So how far do you want to take this? Did you change your mind about waiting? I asked, unable to disguise my hope. Kai Kai groaned in frustration. I don't know. I want to wait, like I was taught. And I want to make our wedding night special instead of just another night. But then I look at you and I want to just attack you, and I know you and Bulma are doing it, so she trailed off, clearly conflicted. I smiled and gave her a close-mouthed kiss. You know there's plenty of stuff in between kissing and making love. She blinked up at me with virginal confusion. Really? Like what? I shared a naughty grin with her and trailed my hand down her side before cupping her womanhood through her dress. I taught Kai Kai things about her body she had never even known, my fingers teasing and touching her with all the grace of a concert pianist. I swallowed her moans and cries with my mouth while I luxuriated in the feel of the softest thing in the universe. I left her panting and sated with one final kiss before using instant transmission. I found Bulma bent over the bed, her breasts rubbing against the mattress, while her lower half was held aloft by the thrusting body of my multiform. I grinned and, moving so fast she didn't notice the lapse, vanished the multiform and took his place balls deep inside her. After I finished off that round, I set Bulma down and crawled onto the bed with her. Bulma sniffed. Goku, what's that smell? Did Kai Kai spray perfume on you or something? I chuckled deep in my throat and held my fingers up to her nose. In a manner of speaking. Bulma, my queen of the bedroom, managed to blush. Oh. She got that look when she was thinking about something. Goku, I don't suppose. I shapeshifted into a female version of my body. My breasts were A cup at best, and I still had an 8-pack, but my crotch had inverted, and that was all that mattered. Way ahead of you, fiancé. Bulma and I did things that night that would make the most hardcore Yuri authors blush. The next day, Bulma stated she'd come to the conclusion she was definitely not a 0 on the Kinsey scale. Which opened up all kinds of possibilities, which filled me with primal hunger and curiosity. Bulma and I had a late morning that day. My training continued as always, aided by a new breakthrough. Bulma had finally managed to crack the ultra-divine water. It took a lot of research, but she finally managed to work out the magic behind it and pioneered yet another new branch of science, thaumaturgy. Whereas Kai was the energy of living things, magic involved using energy from another dimension. Most of it flew over my head, but the point was that Bulma came up with a new way to improve my training. The ultra-divine water was the case of a cure being worse than the cold, forcing the body to cannibalize its own resources to grow stronger. The toxicity was abated only by an extremely positive aura or someone of pure heart. I'm not quite sure I met that standard without hopping on the Nimbus, but luckily I didn't have to find out. Bulma manufactured a much weaker version that also worked with the Senzu bean extract, healing the damage as soon as it happened. She started customizing my sage pills, and my gains had never been higher. When Super Saiyan 8 was actually easy to maintain, I figured that I'd milked all I could from that form. I flew off into the Diablo Desert yet again, actually managing to find the same depression I'd created with mere blowback from the first Super Saiyan transformation. I flew down into the bottom of it and got into the lotus position. With nary a flicker in my aura, I went Super Saiyan. Where once it had felt like an overdose of stimulants, it now was no different from being in my normal body. I blew out a breath and focused on the slight burn in my spine, where the engines of this transformation were running deep inside me. Gathering all my Kai into a single surge, I sent it all into the SLs, forcing them to kick this transformation into the next gear. There was a small explosion, in the way that 15 kilotons was a small nuclear warhead. The little sand that had fallen into the hollow with me was burned to glass, while the dunes around me were blasted away with the force of the energy my body was giving out. I sat still, afraid to move lest I break the very air. The power flowing through me was a pale shadow of Super Saiyan 8, but it was still considerable. I got the thought that I had run before I had walked, mastering the hybrid form before expanding on the Super Saiyan transformation. Well, no use crying over spilled milk. In any case, I now had a brand new form to try out and adapt to. I held up a hand and watched the bioelectricity flicker around my fingers. Hello Super Saiyan 2. Time continued to fly by as it always had. I trained for most of the time I was awake, either on mastering Super Saiyan 2, meditating to try and alchemize my mortal Kai into the divine counterpart, or trying to crush myself into a pancake in the gravity chamber. Speaking of, my favorite room now went up to 1000 Gs, and Bulma told me it was as far as it could possibly go for a while without risking destruction every time it turned on. There simply weren't materials strong enough to handle that level of force. Of course, that inspired her to try and develop and produce them. She spent most of her research hours doing that when she wasn't planning the wedding. I had very little input on that front, by the way. I acknowledged that weddings were mostly for the wives and took getting shut out by both my fiancés in regards to the arrangements with as much grace as I could while feeling left out. It was my day too, after all, I should be more involved than just showing up in a tux at the right time. Briefs, Ox King, and Grandpa Gohan all chuckled when I complained to them and advised me that I was better off staying out of the whole thing. Women, supposedly, went absolutely insane when it came to nuptials. I kept track of all my other friends. Krillin and Yamcha, as two-time quarter-finalists in the WMAT, lived off endorsement deals when they weren't training. Yamcha and Launch seemed perfectly content to play house, while Krillin went back to touring the globe in search of adventure and training opportunities. Yan and Chiaotzu trained under Master Roshi for a year before leaving to start their own dojo, the New Crane School. They were very happy together and together, as I learned from an ill-timed instant transmission. Wouldn't have thought Chiaotzu had it in him. Of course, they might have left for the sake of their sanity. Master Roshi, in a bizarre twist, became a fitness model, releasing a line of workout videos like the ones he used to watch. His little shack on the island turned into a Playboy mansion, filled with toned tanned women in swimsuits that helped him inspire his viewers. Oolong crashed with Roshi, the two perverts getting along swimmingly. Kami and Piccolo were progressing at literal inhuman pace. The Guardian of Earth had caved and ordered for his own gravity chamber from Capsule Corps. The Super Centenarian was determined to at least be in the top 10 of the fighters on the planet. Piccolo just wanted to be as strong as me, his hero. I sparred frequently with the two and found myself taking time to play with the younger, developing a real friendship with the Namekian youth. As he went through the accelerated development of his species, he matured to a teenager within a couple years. When I deemed him ready, I invited him down to the surface so he could learn more about the planet he was born to protect. He got along great with me and my friends, especially with Bulma and Kai Kai. Bulma discovered a keen intelligence between those pointy ears and tutored Piccolo in science until the two were having long, drawn-out debates about theory and experiments. Piccolo also proved to have a domestic side, asking Kai Kai on how to make clothes the old-fashioned way. I often walked in on the two of them with needles and thread, making new capes and guys to fit Piccolo as he grew to his adult height in fits and spurts. Bulma had a weird little smile on her face one day after Piccolo visited. So, Piccolo's nice. Oh yeah, he's a good kid, I agreed. I looked up Namekians in the archive. Fascinating species. They live on just water, you know. They can process a senzu bean or other solids in a pinch, but for the most part they live off liquids. Yep, pretty neat, I said distractedly, cleaning up the living room after the impromptu hanging out session we'd had that afternoon. They're hermaphroditic too. Not only can they reproduce asexually through eggs, but sexually with compatible species. Huh. You learn something new every day. Bulma sighed. You're an idiot. I blinked. We've established that, but what brought this on? Nothing. Nothing. Oh, I need to call the florist about the centerpieces. I blinked after her. Okay, what was that about? Before I knew it, it was September 1st, 755. I was in the middle of an intense workout in the gravity chamber, the gravity set to conditions roughly that of the core of a star. I was really stretching my muscles, exercising while in Super Saiyan 8 2. I look damn badass in this form, if I do say so myself. My hair turned Super Saiyan blonde. My eyes were an acid green, as if the yellow of Super Saiyan 8 and the turquoise of Super Saiyan had merged. My muscles bulged even more, yet remained small enough not to impact my speed. And the fur that covered my body had gone from red to a burnt orange. I imagined that if and when I achieved Super Saiyan 8 3, I would be blonde all over. But that day was a long way off. I was only about a fifth of a way into mastering the 1000x multiplier form. In the middle of my jumping one-legged squats, the lights began to flash red. I paused, turning towards the door. Why would someone interrupt me? Had something happened? I wordlessly reverted to my base form, dropping the mass magnifier as the room's gravity augmentation vanished. If I hadn't, my aura would have surged outwards without the weight pressing it down and possibly damaged the chamber. Bulma walked in, smile on her face. Hey Goku. I wanted to talk to you about the wishes tomorrow. Hey, babe, I said, coming over to kiss her cheek. She'd gotten over her aversion to touching me when I was all sweaty from a workout. Now she found it sexy instead of gross. Women change for love, too. What is it? It must be important. Goku, you've been in here for 8 hours already, it wouldn't kill you to take a break. Bulma handed over a piece of paper, a low-tech way of keeping the wishes secret. Bulma, in a touch of paranoia, had set her supercomputers to scrubbing the internet of any reference to the Dragon Balls, Shenron, or wish-granting magic. The only computer with any information on them was the archive, which spent all its time locked in the inner sanctum. I unfolded the sheet, reading Bulma's precise handwriting. Soul marks. Aren't those a trope from romantic fiction? Bulma shrugged. Sure, it's a little girly. But an easy way for everyone to find their soulmate, or even mates as the case may be, should make everyone happy. Yeah, except for the couples that won't have matching tattoos. I smiled at her and moved down to the second wish. I blinked. Protect the solar system with the same magic as Earth. Are we sure that counts as just one wish? Can't hurt to ask. If it turns out Shenron can't do it, just protect the moon. It has the largest colony, has the most lives to lose should something happen. Protecting Venus and Mars and even the sun can come next year. Sensible. My eyes tracked to the last line. My tail stopped its absent-minded swing. I wanted to discuss it with you, Bulma said. I sighed, conflicted. It's a nice gesture. But is it really a priority? We've been selfless for years, we can afford a selfish wish. And when you think about it, this isn't even that self-serving. It's bringing an amazing, fascinating species back from the brink of extinction. Bulma grinned. Plus, I want my parents-in-law to be at my wedding. What makes you so sure that the wish will apply to them? Bulma cupped my face and grinned. They made you. And so it was that the next day, my third wish was I wish for all good-hearted Saiyans killed by the PTO and Frieza to be resurrected here on Earth. Shenron nodded. Your wish is granted, he said, before vanishing. I caught the balls in less than a second, returning to the lookout before any of the new occupants noticed. I surveyed the crowd of people, which was disturbingly small. I knew that Saiyans were a savage and warlike people, but less than 100 meeting the standards of Shenron's magic was a bit depressing. Everyone. I shouted, flaring my aura so that they all could feel the force of my power. Heads went down and tails curled between legs. I was a bit surprised at the response. I'd half expected having to beat them all into submission, not scaring them into not even fighting with a little flex. I understand you might be confused, but everything will be explained. What the hell's going on? Questioned the man at the front, one of the few to not bow down. I walked forward to face him. It was like looking in a mirror. He had a few scars and a much more hostile aura, but we were clearly related. I just brought you all back to life, Dad. The man's eyes widened. Kakarot. I shrugged. I go by Goku these days. But you can call me that if you really want. It's the name you and Mom gave me. Kakarot? Asked a woman, walking forward from where she'd been cowering behind Bardock. I smiled, tail wagging. I had never seen her before, but a small part of me seemed to recognize her. Hey Mom. Oh, Kakarot. She rushed forward, hugging me. I cradled her as she sobbed into my shoulder. Bardock seemed embarrassed at the show of emotion, but he didn't try to stop her. My boy. My baby boy. You're all grown up. Oh, this is a miracle. How did this even happen? It's a long story, I said, pitching my voice so most of them could hear me. The short version is, Earth has these magical items called Dragon Balls that grant wishes. I wished for all the good Saiyans killed by Frieza to be revived. I looked them over. It looks like this is it. Bardock shrugged. I recognize some of these men and women. They were from the servile caste, those deemed too weak to serve in the army. Their hands aren't stained with blood, it makes sense that they would count as good. It's a wonder how I'm here. Or us, spoke up a man with a long face and spiked up hair. Next to him stood a Saiyan woman in a leotard, a man with the build of a sumo wrestler, and a hulking giant. Bardock's eyes lit up. Tora. Fasha. Shujish. Borgos. He seemed to recover from his emotional outburst and adopted a stern expression. Nice to see you alive. Captain. They all saluted. I chuckled. Are all Saiyans emotionally constipated or is that just dad? A little of both, dear, Jain replied. I had them all fly with me to a colony Bulma had already set up in a mountainous desert, a region most closely resembling planet Vegeta. It proved sadly too large for the party, but that just meant there was room to grow. Everyone had their pick of the houses, and each came with their own gravity gym and a selection of gravity belts. Most of the Saiyans happily put them on, feeling uncomfortable in such low gravity. As things settled down, the colony of New Sadala proved to be unobtrusive neighbors to Earthlings. Most of the reborn aliens were gentle-natured and were content to enjoy the second shot at life. They took up hobbies, what with all the food and other resources being provided by Capsule Corps. The others, chief among them my dad and his team, couldn't sit still without going insane. They trained for long hours in their gravity gyms and had Colosseum-like battles once a month. Bardock was the undisputed champion, except when I decided to join in. It was nice to have sparring partners as nuts for combat as I was. I was something of a messiah-like figure, much as I tried to present myself as just a normal guy and friend. Not only had I brought them all back from the dead, but I was ridiculously strong. I had lost my sense of perspective, but Bardock had been considered elite with a PL of 10k. I was over 10m and closing in on 20m every day. Let's just say I always was greeted with a smile and got anything I asked for. As they settled in and started to think of themselves as actually living on Earth, their soul marks came in. The soul marks had become something of a culture since their arrival. They appeared as tattoos etched over the heart, with 2 or more symbolic representations of the people who shared them. Some people swore by them, refusing to even date anyone except their match. Others discounted the whole thing, insisting on being with whoever they wanted, and damn these weird magic bits of ink. Capsule Corps, naturally, set up a database of willing volunteers to help match up the billions who suddenly had a surefire way of finding their perfect half, or thirds, or even more. The existence of multiple matches led to a surge in public awareness and acceptance of polyamory, as well as new laws to redefine the structure of family and next of kin. The Dragon Team, as we had taken to calling ourselves, were not unaffected. Bulma, Kai, and I naturally had matching marks. Ours was of a man inside a fiery corona, with a brain the same blue as Bulma's hair and an ox head with a tiara surrounding it on marked orbits. It looked like a model of a solar system, making Bulma's metaphor for our relationship very apt. Bulma was confident that additions to the mark would happen over time. Due to the wording of the wish, only those that were physically mature and considered themselves denizens of Earth were affected by the magic. Given that everyone was functionally immortal, that meant quite a few May-December romances might prove to be the real thing as time went on, which I'm sure would cause controversy on the world stage, but that was an issue for another time. Tien and Chiaotzu got married soon after, a small affair with just us and a wedding cake shaped like their mark. A mime with 3 eyes. Yamcha and Launch had a messy breakup over the fact that she didn't have a mark, which meant one of 2 things. Her match was still a kid or an alien. Krillin didn't bother looking up his match just yet, not ready to settle down. Master Roshi took the fact he didn't have a mark as an excuse to continue his usual womanizing. Ox King and Grandpa Gohan, as it turned out, shared a mark with Fortunador Baba. The 3 were currently dating, and she had moved her castle next door to theirs. You know, there's something a bit weird about this whole eternal youth thing, Kai spoke up one day when the 3 of us were enjoying a picnic in a park. What's that, doll? I asked, looking up from her lap. I'm probably going to have half-siblings younger than my children. Kai combed her hands through my hair. Bulma patted her shoulder. There, dear. I know the idea of parents having sex is icky. But it's beautiful in its own way. Just focus on the positive. Your family is growing and there will be someone new to love. Bulma chuckled. Not just for you, but for Goku here. If Jain isn't pregnant at the wedding, I'll burn my dress. They're all over each other, from what I can tell. I hope it's a girl, I said idly. I already have a brother out there. A little sister would be nice. Of course he doesn't have a problem with it, Kai muttered to herself. Let me take your mind off it, Bulma said, leaning in for a kiss. We'd introduced the idea of intimacy between the 2, and Kai wasn't opposed to it. They mostly did it to rile me up because it had a serious effect on me. Case in point, I growled low in my throat, split into a multiform, and leapt at the 2. The 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament had a record low attendance of 72. Rather than fear over the whole King Piccolo murder spree, it seemed to be because people knew I would be attending. With a proud smirk, Bulma explained that she had leaked a few of my low-key workouts on the internet, showing me moving faster than the eye could see and throwing energy blasts like they were free candy. When I asked why she would do such a thing, she got a fire in her eyes. I'm not going to let that Mr. Satan poser take all the credit in this timeline. If anyone is getting hailed as a hero and getting cities named after him, it's my future baby daddy. I just nodded, afraid of setting her off further. With the wedding just a couple days away, she was extremely high-strung. Anyway, the preliminaries were short this year. In the spirit of fairness, Chiaotzu didn't rig the drawing this time. I fought my way to the top naturally, and the others did their best with who they got. The lineup was a bit different from what I remembered. For one thing, Dr. Jiro was on parole and happily working as a consultant at Capsule Corps. I had used the CC on him personally. He was ethically working on bio-android research as the next stage in evolution and was one of the few Bulma and Dr. Briefs could carry an actual conversation with. The point of all this was that mercenary Tao was still getting meals through a straw in prison, so he wasn't there. And Kai, while health conscious, had no desire to fight. Bardock and his team had entered, though, and were finding themselves pleasantly surprised at the quality of Earth's fighters. Kami and Piccolo had arrived as well, eager to test how their training had gone. Master Roshi opted out, acknowledging that he was out of his weight class. The top 8 came down to Chiaotzu vs Tien, me vs Kami, Krillin vs Piccolo, and Yamcha vs Bardock. The other 4 members of the Planet Elite Force had fought valiantly and within an inch of breaking tournament rules, but the Dragon team had beat them down. As friends of the company, they all had state-of-the-art gravity gear and most of them were in the 6-digit PL club. Even with Zenkai boosts from brutal fights allowed by Sage Pills, a handy replacement for rejuvenation pods, I'd been told, the Saiyans lost since most of them were brawlers with no technique to speak of going up against trained martial artists. The exception was my dad, whom I personally sparred with once a week and pushed himself the hardest out of all of them. I felt sorry for Yamcha. Please tell me your dad knows the meaning of the word restraint, Bulma begged me when she came to visit before the quarterfinals. Not as well as you would hope. He's a born and raised Saiyan. If he doesn't give his all, it doesn't count as a fight, I answered. Bulma got alarmingly red before she took a deep cleansing breath and let it out. Fine. It's fine. We could use a bigger arena anyway. The announcer hyped us up before the matches started. Bardock seemed to get a following just because he was my dad. Then the fights began. Tien managed to defeat his husband, winning something I would guess based on the blush he got after Chiaotzu whispered in his ear. Kami and I bowed to each other, grins on our faces, before facing off. This was the first tournament where I wasn't using gravity gear. I'd decided it would be an insult to the other fighters now that they were at such a high level. I'd match their PL and win with technique, I had decided. The Guardian of Earth proved his might and mastery of fighting, but all my experience with Bulma's droids and the other fighters proved its worth. Piccolo proved to be a fast learner and dedicated disciple of my teachings, managing to beat Krillin and make it look easy. Yamcha reached the achievement of lasting a full minute against Bardock before going into shock from so many broken bones. I made sure Yamcha got his Sage Pill soon after and then spent the time leading up to the semi-finals, cooing at my mom's baby bump. Bardock looked liable to crawl out of his skin at his son, behaving so emotional he said the word like it was a curse word. Tien was easily the most powerful human on the planet, which unfortunately for him didn't do much against the most powerful Saiyan. We had a good proper rematch and I finally took him down with a pressure point barrage. We shook hands afterwards, which got real cheers and camera flashes from the crowd. Piccolo and Bardock had a real knockdown, bare-knuckle fight. Somehow, they'd gotten it into their heads that this was a showdown between Namekian and Saiyan. Slug went up against Menki, both putting on a real showing, especially since both had a PL of over 1M. Bardock finally won more from luck than anything, tackling Piccolo and managing to force him to fall on the ground outside the arena, while my dad flew just enough not to touch it and get a double knockout. I comforted my protege with a hug, while Bulma gave him a sage water and Kai wiped his sweaty face. Bardock seemed a bit put out that we were showering attention on the loser instead of the winner, but Jine managed to distract him with the baby kicking. And believe I lost from a damn ring out. I can fly. Piccolo grumbled. It's okay, you were both pretty exhausted by that point, dumb mistakes will happen, I said reassuringly. What matters is that you did your best. Kai chirped. Come on, drink this and you'll feel better, Bulma prompted. Piccolo took the liquid with the senzu extract added and guzzled it down. Ah, that hits the spot. We all paused, aware of an itching sensation on our chests. Bulma got a triumphant grin and manic gleam in her eyes. Yes. I knew it. What was that? Piccolo asked, pulling aside his guide to look down at her left pectoral. Kai and I gasped. It was the mark we knew so well, with a new addition. A green slub with a turban on the third orbit around the sun or me. Bulma was already pulling out her phone. We'll need to rush order your tuxedo. Good thing you're marrying into obscene wealth. Wait, what are you talking about? Demanded the Namekian that, apparently, had just reached physical maturity. I grinned and, on impulse, leaned in to plant a kiss on that sharp green cheek. It means that you're part of the family, Piccolo. You're stuck with the three of us forever. Kai was chuckling. And here I was thinking you'd be the perfect babysitter. Turns out you'll be making babies with the rest of us. I left Kai to comforting Piccolo through a small nervous breakdown while Bulma coordinated last-minute wedding alterations. I stepped out onto the arena, which had taken a real beating so far. My dad stood opposite me. So I take it that some of my grandkids will be green? He asked neutrally. I smiled at him, too high on life from the new revelation to worry whether he approved or not. Yep. Congratulations, I guess. To each his own. Now, let's fight the way Saiyans were meant to. We started off at full speed and didn't let up. The video cameras had trouble picking up on us even with frame-by-frame analysis. I was told that later a team of animators pieced it all together to make a movie for the world to watch and be amazed by. Dad and I spent about 10 minutes trying to beat the crap out of each other, with me mostly blocking his obviously telegraphed moves and him wildly dodging my own counterattacks. About 10 minutes in, he got desperate and sent up a moonball. I shrugged and followed after him and transforming into an Azaru. He'd probably been banking on having more control, but he was sadly disappointed. It was the first time in decades that two Azaru fought with actual technique and self-control. I finally sent an energy blast out my mouth up at the artificial disc when Dad seemed to be losing it, pounding him down into a crater of the arena as we phased back. The terrified but brave announcer made it all the way to 9 in his countdown when Bardock roared, "I will not lose." And went Super Saiyan. My response was to go Kaioken X5 and put him in a chokehold. No need to have him go crazy on the surge of energy and cause even more damage. I was declared the winner for the third time in a row. Sadly, the only ones there to witness it was the shaking announcer, the aliens, and the dragon team. Everyone else had fled once the giant monsters started throwing around destructive blasts. As I expected. It'll be cheaper to just tear what's left down and build a new arena. And this one will be sized for the crowds and designed to handle this level of punishment. Heed my words, I will keep getting my data and my money. Bulma roared, crushing her cell phone into parts in her grip. Now might be the time to release that book, honey, I said from a safe distance. Maybe if everyone had Kai, the results wouldn't be so predictable. And it would make things more interesting for the crowd and get you more data for your research. That's actually a good idea. And it'll give people time to learn while the new arena is built and we get used to being parents. Which sounds like a better title. Forgotten Art or Groundbreaking Science. Kai spoke up. I like the second one. It's appropriate considering that it will be teaching people how to break the ground. I'm getting married tomorrow, Piccolo said in a daze. I hugged him from the side. Yep. And admitted, you love us, it's not that bad. We're going to be an awesome family. How about I be daddy and you be papa? Dad was still fuming to the side. He'd finally achieved Super Saiyan, something legendary for our people, and I'd immediately beaten him down without even transforming. Jine was chuckling at his grumbling and beaming at my own happiness. Oh, this is just so perfect. If only Raditz could be here. I looked over at her. And he will be, I thought to myself, in about 65 months. A lot could happen in almost 5.5 years. That's for today, we will continue in next part.